Good evening, everybody. Today is September 23, 2014. Welcome to the meeting of Stoughton School Committee. We always start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Okay, Madam Vice Chair, what's the first agenda item?
Public comment.
Public comments, okay. We have some people signed in. Last meeting, if I remember correctly, the committee wanted to really limit the public comments to 15 minutes and 3 minutes max for each person. So I'm going to ask Madam Chair, Vice Chair, to time it, or you don't have your...
I'll be timing to the she asked me.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we have first Miss Barbara Anzavino from, actually, Barbara, are you going to talk about the public record stuff?
I have a couple of things to talk about. There's 3 different things I was going to.
Because if you're going to talk about the records, why don't you want me to save it for when the lawyer is here, or you want to use it now? Because
no,
he's gonna be here in 15 minutes.
I would like to use it now.
Okay, you
So
use
that
it
way
now.
you know what to ask him.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Hi. Okay, so the first thing I was going to talk about is the fact that I put in a request for some information, and then I didn't get everything. And then you sent an email to the lawyer on September 11th asking him to give it to me, and I wanted to give you an update and let you know that I received that copy of your email, but I have not received any of the information for the minutes that I was supposed to get. So unfortunately, because of the way the open meeting law works, I have to file because there are time limits. So I'm going to file a complaint, and I'm letting you know. I have the paperwork here for you. I feel that we can probably not have to go too much further because I feel that, but again, there's time limits, and I don't really have a choice.
Okay.
Okay. Secondly, I asked as a member of the Finance Committee for some certain information, and in the past, I've been doing this for a number of years. I have simply sent in my request and have gotten the information back pretty quickly. If I haven't gotten the information back, I have at least gotten an email that said why the information might be delayed. Like, we have to look it up, we have to do this, whatever. And I sent in a request last week. I got nothing from anybody. So my first question to you is, who should I be sending it to? Who, when the Finance Committee needs information from this group, who do you want me to address my letter to?
So we normally do not engage dialogues, but
Okay.
what I will tell you is superintendent is the official custodian of all school department records, so they should go to the superintendent. And to that second request that you got, superintendent and I forwarded it to the lawyer immediately, and he said since he's going to come to the meeting, and some of the stuff that may be answered, so he'll speak to that.
Okay.
Second request.
Okay, and secondly, 2 of the items that were on this list, instead of you even just sending them to me, Mark Snyder got them. So apparently they weren't very secret, and you could have simply have sent me.
Which were
the
they?
Minutes from June 2nd and the latest expense report. So I was very disappointed to find out that Mark Snyder could get them, but I couldn't.
Mark Snyder got the school committee packet, so
Yes.
that's on the agenda today to be approved.
Right, and I'm just saying that, you
Right.
could have simply said, well, I can't, we're talking about these other items, but I can send you this one and this one. That would have been nice. Okay, and thirdly, this is just a courtesy. Last night we had a meeting of the FinCom, and it was overwhelmingly voted to insert an article into the warrant to reopen the school budget and to reduce it by $264,000, which is the amount of the positions, and to put that money in the FinCom reserve. And so as a courtesy, I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that that warrant article was submitted today, though the warrant closed at 4:30. We didn't really have a lot of time to do it, but we are putting that in, and so that town meeting will have the opportunity to discuss the positions.
Okay,
because,
Time.
oh,
That's all
okay,
right.
sorry.
How much time do you need, Barb?
I need about one more minute.
All right.
Okay, so I just
Wait,
wanted to...
I'm sorry,
It's-
he's-
I mean,
he's
we have the policy. Is it
Okay,
up to
that's
the,
fine, I'm fine.
how
It
does
was
the
just a
committee
courtesy.
feel?
I'm going home at 10.
I think we're gonna be done, just to address your last comment, I mean, I heard about it, and in fact, that's one of the things I was going to vote to return it, so I like what you guys have done, but the amount is not as much as it should be. It should have been even more, and we will be discussing that today. Dr. Rizzi?
We'd had this conversation as Mrs. Anzavino's requests come in, and you've mentioned several times that I am the custodian of the records.
Yes, you are.
But some of the material has either not been approved or it's from executive session and so on. So do I have permission to just give Mrs. Anzavino everything she wants, or should we continue to go through
Of
the
course
process?
not. You are the custodian, so as such, you are to protect the executive session minutes. And as you remember, when that request was made, Ms. Shea sent everything she had to the school committee lawyer, and school committee lawyer looked at it and redacted whatever he deemed necessary. And neither you nor me or anybody in the school committee were involved in the process. He just redacted what he thought was necessary and forwarded it directly to Ms. Anzavino.
So is that the process
Yeah, I mean, we
then
just
that you
follow
wish
the
to continue?
process, sure. But all the record requests should be coming to you, wouldn't you agree?
When there are things that are related to minutes you haven't approved yet, executive sessions where the discussions have not yet been made public, I certainly would not consider giving those things out without at least consulting the school committee first. So I think that in the case of things that are not yet public, the request should come to both of us.
Well, unapproved minutes are public records. We just mark them as such, as unapproved minutes, and we can release it to the public. But the executive session minutes is certainly, or any kind of a privileged communication with the lawyer. If you want, we can ask lawyer to come up with a policy on what to release instantly and what not to release instantly.
I would feel better about that.
Okay. Next is Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you for letting me address the committee again. I'm here to talk about public safety. I had a few more things to talk about last time, and I didn't get around to it. One of the things that bothered me when I stayed here and watched the meeting was that there is a committee together, from what I understand, to look into the safety problems at the schools. My two biggest concerns are Hanson, and I live right across from the West for 62 years. But to know that this committee does not allow the public, or from what I understand here, does not give records to the school committee, I have great concerns for that. It's been 2 years since that little girl tragically got hurt and passed, and I think something should be done. Like I said, I lived in front of the West School for a lot of years. In the last 2 or 3 years, the safety problems have gotten a lot worse. The parents are parking on Central Street, which is not, in my opinion, not where they should be parking. I think it's a serious safety issue. I had talked to the head of the planning board, and they were going to do, and I believe they've already completed a study on not the traffic in the intersections, but how many cars in certain sections of Central Street. And obviously, most of us know there's a hell of a lot of cars, especially in the morning and at night. This morning, I should say this afternoon, my wife was looking out the window, and I live on Commercial Street, and that can be somewhat of a problem too. And the kids, what's the name of that? What's that? Yeah. Anyway, it was a bus that's owned by a private company, and they couldn't get down Commercial Street because there was parking on both sides, which is a problem when it happens. The other problem there would be that the town's buses can't get down Commercial Street, and also that the safety equipment that needs to go on occasion, quite often, to Lasivita Court can't get down there. And of course, it even could be worse if a truck tries to get down there and then tries to back out into Central Street. So I'm hoping that this committee will look into if they, I'm hoping they will have another committee put together, or somehow get the committee that's there to be open for the public, because government doesn't work well when it's closed. So I appreciate your time, and I'm hoping we can do something soon. The kids need to get more safety, and like other people have told me that the high school and the junior high have problems too, but it's really the West and the Hanson, because the kids are younger and they're both on Central Street. The other thing would be that
Mr. Mitchell?
the West School is not on a highway, so we'll discuss that, I guess. All right, thank you. I got a picture I wanted to give out. That was this afternoon at between 2:45 and 3 o'clock. That's the kids' bus there that couldn't get up the street for 10 minutes because of the parking on both sides of Commercial. So, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mitchell. Next, we have Pat McNeil.
Hi.
Good.
As usual, I'm speaking about special education. And there's two things in particular today, and I know they're on the agenda, so I figured I'd talk about them first. One is the survey that was done, or is being done. I think hopefully you'll get some answers to questions as to how many people, how it was developed, what it was supposed to measure, and what the intent was. Because to use just an IEP meeting as talking about satisfaction for special education doesn't quite make any sense. And there's really no information as to how many people were even asked and how anonymous it was. So I think that's a big, the data that you may have come up with or they used needs to really be vetted out, and we know what it is. The other thing I know that you're going to be talking about today is the MCAS, and congratulations for having the district go up to a level 2. However, that if you look a little bit closer at some of the data about students with disabilities, they have declined in some areas. They have increased but have not met target, but declined in mathematics for the proficiency growth. I know that it gets very complicated and there's lots of different things, but that's what we have to use. And so, and I know it's a complicated process, but they're not on target. And the other big concern for me was the dropout rate for, the annual dropout rate for students with disabilities also wasn't on target and declined. So those are why I'm excited that you are having more growth. However, not all the students are participating in that growth, and we really need to keep an eye on where they are and what they're doing. So I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to see them get closer. And I think comparing year to year, the data just came out, so it's really hard to kind of look from one year to the next. And I think that will take some doing, and hopefully we can get everybody kind of moving forward and not having any more of these declines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil. Next, we have Mr. Dave Guglia.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is David Gulia. I am a assistant principal at the Dr. Robert G. O'Donnell Middle School. I also live in town, been a lifelong resident with children in the public school system. I had a prepared statement for you tonight. I had put a lot of effort into that prepared statement, but I actually am not going to read from my prepared statement. I just want to speak to you just as a parent. There are 3 new positions. They were Unit B positions. As you may remember, I had a presentation about a month ago to the school committee. I believe these 3 new positions would impact student learning. That's why there are Unit B administrators here this evening. That's why I'm here this evening. I truly believe that these positions will impact elementary students, high school students in particular. And I know that these positions would help improve Stoughton Public Schools. Stoughton Public Schools just received wonderful news. We're a level 2 district. I think that's because of a lot of reasons. The support of parents, the support of the school committee, teachers, administrators. We're all in this together. It's wonderful news. And then we have this opportunity to improve even more as a district with these 3 new positions, which would help teachers and help students. And I can't understand how we're now talking about possibly transferring close to $300,000 that would be used for these new positions back to the town. I think this is now an opportunity for us to possibly go from maybe a level 2 district to maybe even a level 1 district, but we need a little bit more leadership infrastructure. I took a close look at the leadership numbers across this part of the state, and Stoughton is on the low side for administrative numbers. I don't want to give you those numbers, but I just want to be on the record as saying that I believe very strongly as an administrator, a former teacher in Stoughton, and as a parent, that these positions would help students, they would help families. I would be disheartened if the school budget lost this money. I think that this money should be spent on students. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have next Ms. Feeney. Joyce, how are we doing with time?
I'm timing the 3 minutes.
We're not doing the 15 minutes?
You're engaging in discussion. I'm not sure how to.
Good evening. Happy September. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm also speaking on part of Unit B. I'm the Title I specialist. I think the question I have is somewhat of the contract that's between the school committee and the STA that explicitly states that the educators whose overall rating is proficient or exemplary may have at least 4 unannounced observations during that school year. During your discussions, did at any point you see the template that was used to evaluate the teachers, all of which had at least 4 observations per year? Do you want the district administrators only observing classrooms twice a year? And how would it be good for maintaining or improving the level of instruction the children of Stoughton received? And I think the last part of that question would be, why is the STA negotiating team and the Mass Teachers Association allowed to influence you as a school committee members during executive session? You know, I just thank you again for the time and wish you all a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Feeney. 7:21, so let's do one more. Maybe if that's short, we'll do 2 more. Next is Miss Janet Sullivan.
Good evening, Ms. Sullivan.
Good evening. I'm Janet Sullivan, one of the curriculum coordinators for the district. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak tonight. At the last school committee meeting, I believe it was September 9th, you stated that the school administration was top-heavy. I'd like to know what data was used to arrive at this position, because from what I can see, based on the most up-to-date state data available from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Stoughton Public Schools currently spends approximately $250 per student on administration. Now, that's compared to the state average of about $450 for administrative costs. Basically, we run our school district on almost half the administrative costs of the average school district in Massachusetts. The budget for this academic year recognized that reality, and it included addition of 3 new Unit B positions. The 2 curriculum coordinators would be focused on providing support at the elementary school levels. Yes, it'll cost money to provide our students and teachers these vital supports, but I believe, as Mr. Gulia pointed out, that our students and staff deserve our best efforts as they work to meet a myriad of new challenges. If you look at the fact that Stoughton spends $5,412 per student on classroom and specialist teachers, a number exceeding the state average of $5,125 per student, there appears to be a discrepancy. The budget provided funding for 8.5 new teaching positions this year, which were funded, and these positions have been filled. And I fully support my brothers and sisters in Unit A and believe that these positions are needed and that the teachers in this district deserve all the support that we can give them. They're dedicated public servants and deserving of our praise. But at the same time, you purposely unfunded the new administrative positions, and I question why this came about. Where did the idea for these cuts come from? Why were the Unit B administrators removed from any discussion of these after-the-fact budgetary decisions? And why do you refuse to allow the representatives of Unit B to be placed on the agenda for a fair and open discussion of these facts? The Unit B contract clearly states that you must deal with Unit B with regards to anything that affects our working conditions, yet it seems that only the STA president and Unit A members seem to be included in your discussions. Finally, I'd like to state that I've worked for 34 years in the Stoughton Public Schools, 32 years as a classroom teacher director, and the past 2 as a curriculum coordinator. I took this new position because I truly believe that my experience would help our district navigate the many new demands placed on us by the adoption of the Common Core State Standards, the new science standards, and of course the new teacher evaluation system. I've worked tirelessly for our students and staff, but they need more assistance than I and all of my Unit B colleagues can provide. I urge you to live up to the commitments made in the budget and support the administrative positions. Lastly, I would like to state that for the record, I don't want to get into numbers because numbers are thrown around the town a lot, but if you work out the per diem amount of money that I'm paid, if I stayed in my Unit A position, I would be paid on a per diem basis more as a Unit A position than I am in my Unit B. I'll be happy to go over those numbers if you'd like to see them. They're on the contract, they're on the record. I believe that I'm paid very well, very adequately, as I think our teachers deserve what they have. I just want it stated that we all work very hard and we all need your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. So I see it's 7:24, and I see the school committee attorney, Mr. Emerson, came in. So I'm going to end the public comment portion. Joe, sorry, we'll get you next time if you don't mind. Mr. Emerson, would you please come to the podium? And we are moving up to agenda item number 4, fiscal 15 financial transfers. So just to give you background, Mr. Emerson is here on behalf of a request from, I believe, Ms. Husseini and Ms. Anzovino at the, when did we vote this? At the August meeting, we have voted not to support the Unit B positions. And there were some questions, and that was in the executive session. And that was based on the recommendation from Mr. Emerson, so he's here to explain why he recommended it that way and then answer any questions from the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You were in executive session at that August meeting, as you had been in a meeting earlier in July, pursuant to a subsection 3 of the open meeting law, specifically regarding collective bargaining. And the reason for that was because the STA, Stoughton Teachers Association, had submitted a demand to bargain regarding the creation of those new positions and how they would, because the STA under Chapter 150 is the exclusive bargaining representative for Unit B. There was a negotiation session was held at that meeting. We had the representation from the STA, and at that meeting they had specifically made a presentation at which they basically were asking that the committee reconsider the creation of those positions. It was in a context of any negotiations. I came to, I believe, the July 26th or sometime late in July, executive session meeting at which we presented that position of the association. There was discussion. Decision was not made at that point in time, and it was put off to the next school committee meeting. I was not present at that, but it was still an executive session because it was in the context of those negotiations. Had the answer of the school committee been that it was going to move forward with those particular positions, the discussion would have continued in executive session to talk about the strategy of negotiations with the Teachers Association. That is why you were in executive session at that time. The decision itself to not fund the positions is a matter for open session and can only be made in open session. But there was a strategy piece because it was a request from the association. So I'm hoping that clarifies some of the any confusion that may have existed on that.
Dr. Earl?
Yes.
Because I am confused, because when we go into, and I understand what you just said to me, but when we leave open session and go into executive session, we read the agenda for executive session, and the question is asked, will there be any votes taken that need to be taken in open session? Are we returning to open session for votes? Something of that nature. Nothing was stated that day. I do believe if the intention was that there's a possibility to vote to defund those things, that the obligation was for that vote to be taken in open session, even if it meant at 12 at night we stepped out of executive session to take an open session vote. That didn't happen. The vote was taken in its entirety in executive session and was not discussed for several weeks thereafter because nobody felt that they could talk about it because it was in executive session. I'm curious, was it okay to take that vote in executive session and to hold that information for several weeks from the public?
In the executive session vote, as far as the timing, if I may, Ms. Hussein, to speak to that piece, because the vote itself regarding in response to the proposal from the STA was appropriate, in my opinion, under the executive session because it was part of the collective bargaining
The
process.
vote to not fund the positions?
The vote as to, the specific request was from the association was to not pursue, to ask the school committee not to pursue those in the context of negotiations.
Right.
Not to not fund, but not to fill those positions. The next step, I agree with you, the next step has to be in open session as far as the not funding of those positions, because that's a budgetary question and there is no exemption under the open meeting law to allow that kind of discussion in an executive session. So the timing is what you're speaking to. I can't speak to the timing of that. I wasn't present at that meeting, and I can't speak to it.
I'd like to go on record that I absolutely have a problem with the way the vote was taken in executive session, and I have as big a problem with the fact that the information wasn't released to the public and that it was probably two full meetings before it started coming out, and that we actually then talked about it in an open session. It seemed very much like a political ploy to basically stop the process. We had to keep it under wraps so nobody had to take any damage for it.
I agree with her.
So I'm just on the record for that.
Wasn't it your recommendation to take the vote in the executive session and then later on in open session to talk about transfer of the money?
Yes, in an open session.
Yeah.
As far as the timing of that, I'm not the one who sets the agenda and goes forward through
But
that. But the recommendation, my recommendation, and my opinion still is that the initial vote in the executive session was in response to the proposal from the STA. Subsequent to that, to make that an official action regarding the positions and the funding of those positions, that vote was not the decision to not fund the positions, in my opinion, because it legally could not be.
The vote was a decision not to fund the positions.
That has to be done in open
Yes.
session.
Yes.
So wasn't that your recommendation to
Is that it would then be an open session?
move the money in the open session? That would be defunding the positions?
Correct, and that would be an open session.
I-
That discussion and that action, Mr. Chairman, would be in an open session. And I think that's what I said, was we'd have the response to the STA's proposal was acted upon in the executive session because it was under the context, in the context of negotiations.
Okay,
The
Mr.
subsequent
Sol-
action to actually take the action regarding the positions in the budget was not for that executive session. That was for a subsequent, whether it be that same night, the subsequent meeting, or at some point after that, but it had to be an open session.
I think you just answered my question. So even though we had an executive session, then voting for the money at an open meeting like this, we need to do that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then that's what we are doing, right? Transfer of funds.
I'm assuming that's what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing.
See, based on your recommendation, we said, whether to support these positions or not based on the STA.
Its
demand
presentation
for-
in negotiations,
right,
yes.
Right. And then you said that next meeting, you should put on the agenda financial transfers where we move the money away from those positions.
Correct.
Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, in open session.
In open
so
session.
that's what we
Whether it was
did.
the next meeting or not, Erdem was, excuse me, Dr. Euro, was not, it could have happened that night after the executive session or the next meeting. It
Yeah,
was-
so that's, we did that next meeting, so.
This is not the next meeting. The executive, I would like the date on the executive session that the vote was taken, but that was taken more than a meeting ago.
Well, we
No,
put
it
that
wasn't.
on the agenda at the next meeting.
Yeah, this is the next meeting.
No, this is not the next meeting.
not
That
the
we
next
had, we
meeting.
had that.
The date of that executive
We had the
session vote was,
executive session, August 26th,
August.
I believe.
August
And
26th.
then
That was
we
the end of
had
August.
financial
and there've been two
trans-
meetings since.
Is that much
Yeah,
time
We had the
gone
financial transfers on September 9. If you look at the agenda, you will see at the next meeting, we had the financial transfers.
It was in July? I believe it was in July as well.
If I may.
Yeah.
I was at the July executive session because
Okay.
that's when we reported out in executive session the response of the association relative to its demand to bargain.
I
So
will
it's
need to review the
essentially what you
minutes,
could portray as its proposal was just to not go forward with those positions. The subsequent meeting, I was not in attendance, that was in August. And that's the one where the vote was
Okay.
taken, because no action was taken at that July executive session.
Either way, the school year was allowed to start. It was swept under the rug, and in my opinion, it was hidden
No,
from the public.
you're just making false allegations.
No, she's not.
The
No, I have a
attorney-
right to state my opinion, Dr. Earl, please.
Yeah, okay, go
False,
ahead.
and you do not please categorize them as false allegations.
Well, that was
It's two meetings have happened since.
no, it was on the agenda at the meeting after that, and
It was on the agenda at last meeting?
yeah,
No, it wasn't.
take a look.
Anyway.
So, I mean, let's, with the school committee attorney, let's clarify this. This is my recollection, and this is what we followed. The committee acts on the STA recommendation, STA demand in the executive session, which we did. And then the next meeting, we put in financial transfers, which, those words came from you, to move the money away from that.
Correct.
So, which we did. So, again, it's on the agenda today, and we are going to move the money today. Okay? So that takes care of the issue completely, isn't it?
It would, if I'm understanding you correctly, from what I'm hearing,
Okay.
it appears that you would be not removing the money so that it would not fund those particular positions.
I have a question.
Just a minute, let's hear what the attorney says.
That's what I understand, is
Could
that
you say
would-
that?
From what I understand, from what you just represented, Dr. Earl, is that to transfer that money from that particular line item would be then for the purposes of not funding those particular positions,
Right.
those 3 Unit B
Right.
positions, proposed Unit
And
B
that
positions.
was, first time it appeared on the agenda was the first meeting after the executive session vote, which was September 9th. And at that time, people divulged their votes. They said that I voted this way, I voted that way. And at that time, superintendent made a recommendation not to move the money. So then we carried it to the agenda to this meeting where we are going to act on it. In the meantime, the finance committee have decided to remove the money from the school budget.
Finance committee doesn't actually decide to remove the money. They put a warrant article in so town
Right.
meeting could act on it.
That's correct.
The finance committee does not make that
Dr. Earl,
decision.
can I just say something?
So could I just finish?
Sure.
So the question to you is, so if we make a motion to return the money to town,
Yes.
is that good enough for that purpose, or do we?
It'll serve that purpose, yes.
Okay. So that's what we are.
Remove the money from the budget.
That
that
was
would
my,
fund those
yeah,
positions.
that was good. Dr. Brown?
Sure, how you doing? So I'm looking at this paper here, the position added for fiscal year 15. So Are we saying, just so I can be clear, we are not funding the curriculum coordinators for humanities for 88,000? No?
Correct.
Okay. For the curriculum coordinator for STEM, the STEMS program, science, technology, engineering, and math, which we need, we're not funding that either for 88,000?
Correct.
We're also not funding the Dean of Discipline, Unit B for high school, 88,000.
Yes.
Correct? So this money's going back, but wasn't this money, Barbara, already given to us to use for these positions? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
So what's the problem?
So
Got quiet in
the,
here.
the committee voted that they find the teachers' union demand persuasive and acted not to fill these positions, not
Okay.
to support these positions.
Let me speak as an educator now, and I'm in Unit B. You're talking about having the level for schools have went up to a level 2. Possibility with these 3 positions, it can go up to a level 1. I just can't understand why we're letting somebody dictate to us on positions that we need to fill in order for a quality education, teaching and learning to really happen. It's almost like we don't want these positions filled so that someone doesn't be overseen. That's just my opinion from an educator.
Can I say
Yes, please,
something?
go ahead.
I chose not to fill these positions because as a mom who goes to volunteer to the schools, who has had a son go through a particular school and saw the services that he had received and how much they helped him move further. He's an excellent student. I would like to fill the positions that we had to cut in the budget back in 2008 before we start adding new positions onto our budget. And that's how I'm voting. It's not anything to do with the STA. That's just me being a mom, and that's how what I feel is right.
Can I just address that? So you said 2008. Since 2008, we now have a new evaluation system. And without these people, the teachers are not going to be evaluated appropriately. They're just not going to be.
I'm talking about children and hands-on help.
I'm talking about if they don't evaluate them, the service won't be given to the children. All that we're doing here is going to affect the children. If they
And
can't
as
do
for-
if they can't do their job to make sure that quality education is going on, effective teaching and learning, as you will call it, it can't be done without these people. Trust me, it can't be done.
I understand that, but
So
as
why did
feel-
you not vote for it?
Because
That's
I
what I'm
feel like
saying.
I would like to have the hands-on, I want more reading teachers, I want more hands-on help for
And
my
somebody has to
children.
evaluate those teachers, and these people sitting there
Our
proudly
teachers are
there.
wonderful. We went from a level 1 to a level 3 to a level 1.
Because of their support.
Next year, actually, we're not going to even have a level because we voted for Park, so we can just forget about the levels.
Ms.
we are.
Husseini?
That's incorrect.
Can't forget about the level. This is really, really
You
elementary
still
now.
have levels?
Yes.
The
We have the
Park-
same levels, that's no
Yes.
no
See?
impact.
But, so Park, you have level 1, level 2, level...
No, we'll maintain the same
We need some
level.
professional development on the board.
Ms. Husseini?
Okay, mine's a two-part question. One is to address Ms. Enochian's comment, is this budget did restore reading teachers. It did restore teachers. But I'm failing to see the connect between voting to cut the positions and return the money. How does that put teachers back in the classroom? If you had told me you're going to take the money and move it into instruction to hire other teachers, I'd understand your argument. But I'd also like to address something that Dr. Url said, because in the discussion that we had at last meeting, and in the discussion that we've had around these Unit B positions, it was always about new information and it was, numbers. You just said here a minute ago that the teachers' union demand was persuasive, and that is why we voted that.
You all voted.
I don't know what that persuasive union demand was, because all I heard is that you had new numbers that proved something. So could you please enlighten me as to what the teachers'
Something
union
was.
demand was that persuaded you to
It
vote
was
that
the
way?
handout you have received at the.
Can we refresh our memory
meeting.
then?
I don't have the handout.
I
but,
left it home.
Well, I think the public,
Dr.
I think the
Rizzi.
public deserves the answer
need
as
to
to
know.
what it
We got
was.
people's jobs on the line
Could I
here.
respond to Mrs.?
Okay, wait a minute.
I just wanted to tell her that the reason why I'm voting to bring it back to town is because we can't agree on how to fund these. We got from town meeting approved a budget. We're not agreeing on how to fund these positions, so I feel like I can't take the money and say I'm going to get what I want with teachers. So I think the fiscal responsibility thing for me to do is to return to town.
So instead, you're going to punish the teachers who could be using those resources in terms of curriculum help and additional observation. I really don't understand it, and I'm
Don't
sorry.
either.
I'm not trying to put
Excuse
you on
me,
the
I have a
spot.
Okay, Dr. Rizzi is next, and Mr. Soares.
Thank you,
I hope the public is listening to
evening.
this.
everyone. I'm just going to say, and this is, it is relevant. And I want to thank Katie for proposing this. We had a meeting Wednesday last to set the agenda for this meeting, which I think that's a really great idea. And so we got a lot of things on the table that were going to be at the meeting. This piece of paper explaining, or I won't say explaining, because in fact, these are numbers related to why the Unit B positions would be too expensive. Dr. Ural, where did these numbers come from? We didn't have them at our Wednesday meeting.
These are, I just got them from the budget.
Are
I
these
just
the
got 'em.
persuasive union numbers?
No, those
Okay.
are the ones, this
Well-
is my own analysis.
Okay, so
it
this
has nothing
this
to
piece
do-
of paper was in the packet, and I didn't see it Wednesday, so I didn't have a chance to get this ready for you until in time to go out in the packet, because I didn't know it was going to be there. But I'm going to pass this out. These are the actual numbers that we got from the budget. They are different from these numbers here, and these are in fact accurate from our payroll department, and I can talk to them a little bit, and Mary probably should have one if you wish to. Otherwise, the committee can look at these, but the expenses and the cost of increases and so on in this particular piece of paper are not accurate. We also did an analysis of the time that the new evaluation system will take, and so we wanted you all to have an opportunity to see that in its nuts and bolts and nitty-gritty, because that's also important. But insofar as what you decide to do with these positions, of course, as a school committee, it is your right, but you should have accurate information when you are making those decisions. And some of the differences, you can see that the increases in the salaries over time, I want to speak to that a little bit because there's some history involved there, that the people who were elected in April were not there for the original piece. When the school committee first started negotiating with its various unions, way back now, 2 years ago almost, the other unions that were not Unit A, so Unit B, and our custodians, our secretaries, our food service folks, our paraprofessionals, they all agreed to work with the school committee for everybody's sake on a new kind of step system, which would make sure that we could rely on 2.5% increase for all of our unions every year.
I'm sorry, which paper are you talking from?
I'm talking about this one that says proposed Unit B positions. The other one is related to evaluations. So what happened in all of those negotiations and with those various unions is every union was going to agree to 2.5% going forward every year, every step, every person. But when we placed everyone on the new grid, some of them were less than 2.5%, so they were 1.5 or 2. So because of the cooperation from these folks in giving us a sustainable, predictable rate of increase over time, we took each person who was going to be less than 2.5 and moved them up so that they would be held harmless for having made this agreement. So if you see, like in 14, some people are 3.9. That was because they were being held harmless for that 1 year. One person actually gained a doctorate. So if you move lanes, you do go up more than the 2.5%. And then one person you can see is, so the exponential increases here that people seem to be concerned about, Unit B and all of our other unions with the exception of Unit A, we do have a predictable increase of 2.5%. So I just wanted you to see these numbers as compared to the ones that were in the packet. But other than that, and to get a sense of what the new evaluation system entails. If anybody would like to ask any further questions about it, we'd be happy to answer them.
Actually,
but I wanted
before
to
you
bring
do
that
that,
into
I
the
just
con-
wanted
the
to
discussion.
tell Dr. Rizzi where I got my numbers from. I just looked at the budget, like a annual budget, fiscal 13, fiscal 14, fiscal 15, that were posted on the school website. And let's take a few examples. I said fiscal 13, Director of Student Discipline, 56,143, 56,143, so they are the same. The budget that was, oh, so you're saying he made, I was just looking at the budget figures. I didn't have the actual salaries. So you're saying it was budgeted for 56, then actual salary was 52. Then I looked at the fiscal 14 budget that was posted on the school website. It said the Director of Student Discipline was given as a 45,000. But you're saying he was actually paid 58,000, so he was given $13,000 more.
No, from
And then,
52.6 to
88,000
58.8, excuse me, sir. From 52.6 to 58.8 isn't $13,000 more, but it is a Unit A typical increase.
What I'm saying,
'Cause that
budget
position's
versus
Unit A.
actual. So in
One at a
fiscal
time.
14 budget, you put down $45,000 for Director of Student Discipline, but tonight you are saying, although it was budgeted for 45, you paid him or her $58,000. So that's what I'm saying, $13,000 more than the budget. The next one is Dean of Student Discipline, $88,000. That's coming from your overall summary sheet. I have no idea, what you're gonna pay him. So that came exactly from that, prospectus where you had your picture and Mr. Hartman's picture. If you look in there, it says $88,000. So that's the number that I got. Now, ELA Curriculum Coordinator and STEM Curriculum Coordinator, they were both listed on the budget for fiscal 13 as new positions for $87,000. And the members of the Finance Committee, I remember Dr. Camacho asking repeatedly, and I also asked you in the school committee meetings, I said, Dr. Rizzi, we budgeted these for 87. Were we close? Did we hire them for 87? He said, yeah, it's pretty close. I said, how close were we? We were pretty close. I mean, I will pull the videos if you want to. Then I'm appalled to find out that you actually, on that year when you said it's pretty close, you paid that person $103,000. That wasn't in the budget. The next number for the STEM Curriculum Coordinator, I got $104,000. Again, that came from fiscal 14 budget document posted on the school website. And you're saying, although it was budgeted 104, you actually gave that person $109,000. And then the last one, we agree, because that one came from the most recent budget posted on the school website. So I didn't make these numbers. These are your numbers. But apparently your budget numbers are different than the practice.
Well, it often happens that when you put a number in for a new job, you don't necessarily know until you see the candidates whether it's going to be a little less or it's going to be a little more. And it's because of that reason we budget for the people we have and we budget for what we project. But then when we see the pool of candidates, sometimes we spend a bit more, sometimes we spend a bit less. But if these numbers were meant to indicate that the increases to new Unit A positions would be these numbers, in fact, due to the Unit B positions, due to the Unit B contract, the increase in salary for any Unit B person once they're hired is 2.5% a year unless that person moves a lane by getting another degree. So if one were to extrapolate that the positions would increase 20% in 1 year or not, the way the contract is structured, it isn't in fact the case.
Right. So my point is that we budgeted for a certain amount, $87,000, and after 2 years or 3 years, that person is making $112,000. So that's a big jump. From year to year, you say 2.5% increase, but your increase numbers here in the ELA curriculum coordinator is 3.9%, 4%, 5.7%, and 2.5%. So I mean, if they are only getting 2.5%, where did 5.7% come from?
So I think
where did 4% come from?
She explained that. She just explained the 4% was
I
a
don't
lane
need
and
you
2.5.
to explain to me that she explained.
Well,
okay?
I'm explaining to the
Thank
public
you.
that that's
Thank
been
you.
said.
You're quite
I
welcome,
didn't hear the
dear.
public say anything.
Okay.
Duh.
So, did anybody else want to
May I
speak?
ask
Yes,
Mr. Emerson a
I-
question?
Yeah, please.
Oh, Mr. Soares.
I'm sorry, did you
You're
want to
already
say
in the queue, please.
Oh,
say
Mr.
that.
Soares, it's your turn. Or unless
I
you
guess I have two
or-
questions, Dr. Vizzi, and I certainly respect you as a person and as your intelligence. But when you explained these sheets, I was totally lost. Dr. Earl started to explain it. He was pointing to certain levels and certain things. But you didn't point to, that's why I asked you, I says, what page are we on? Okay, so I'm kind of a black and white guy. I mean, I have to follow the route, okay, in order for me to understand totally what's going on. And second question is, why now are we getting these?
As I also tried to explain, when we had our agenda meeting on Wednesday last, this particular piece of paper wasn't in the material that we discussed. And so I didn't actually see that until, well, actually Monday, because I didn't realize that that had gone in the packet because it wasn't discussed at our meeting, which meant that I didn't have an opportunity before the packet was put together to make some changes and correct the
Just
numbers.
one little correction. I believe I had that sheet in my hand, and I believe I read those numbers out loud during the meeting. I mean, I may be wrong, you may be wrong, so we'll watch the video and come back to it at the next meeting. Mr. Ford,
so hold on, I'm sorry.
He's not done, sorry.
What question was it on this agenda that prompted you to do this?
Well, we were going to be talking about the financial transfers, which is the conversation. This is the agenda item, as Mr. Emerson has recommended, where the Unit B jobs and whether or not they're going to be funded are discussed. So because of the fact that the numbers are different than the ones that were in the packet, I thought this was an appropriate time to bring them up because it's part of that whole discussion. And that's what this fiscal 15 financial transfer item is for, I believe.
Now, we couldn't have brought this up sooner? Last meeting, the meeting before? I'm a little confused.
The paper wasn't there.
This piece of paper wasn't there, so it really didn't, it hadn't been brought up at that point, so.
Okay. Mr. Ford.
And Mr. Soares, would you like me to just put in a couple points of clarification for you? I think I understand completely where you're coming from. If you look at the 3.9%, so when you looked at Dr. Earl's numbers, he came in as a raise of 7.
Again, you're talking in the middle?
The middle tape.
I thought you were talking at the top.
And the point the superintendent was trying to make is if you looked at the numbers provided by Dr. Earl on that document, it would appear as if the ELA coordinator went up by 7.1% and 8.0% from FY13 to FY15. Over here, if you go all the way to the right, it shows the actual increases. And what happened with this particular person in FY14, there's a number of 3.9%. The raise for that position would have been 2.5%, but when Unit B came on the new salary grid, people that would have actually lost their increment came up an extra step, or 2 steps, to normalize themselves on the grid, and that was negotiated by school committee. So instead of the 2.5, this person actually got a 3.9%, because in converting to the new grid of 2.5%, there had to be an adjustment. When you look at the next step, 4.0, that would have been a 2.5% increase, except for the person received a doctorate in education, which brought them over a lane. So in addition to the step, the 2.5% step, they also picked up a lane, which equated to 4%. But that is much less than the 8%, and both the 3.9% and the 4.0% increases were based on a 2.5 step increase overall. If you move down to the STEM curriculum coordinator, you'll notice, if you just looked at the numbers provided in the document by Dr. Earl, it would appear as if from FY13 to FY14, the STEM curriculum coordinator's salary increased by 20%. And then from 14 to 15, 7.3%. When you put in the actual numbers, from 13 to 14, instead of 20%, it was only 5.7%. And that's also a product of Unit B salaries coming over to the new grid system, where it wasn't a direct upgrade of 2.5%, but they were repositioned on the grid as part of the negotiation in order to move to the new grid. When you look down at FY 14 to 15, you see the 2.5% because you have a hard salary in 14, and there was no lane change to go in addition to the step increase. And I think what the superintendent was trying to say by doing these numbers is in Unit B, you now have a step system which increases by 2.5% every year for the long term, which is remarkably predictable for the school committee. And it allows the school committee to better budget the funds that you have in case there are other things that you want to do in the future, such as build a high school. So now you have a more responsible STEP system to draw upon to project your funds in the long term. So, but I did also have a question for Mr. Emerson, and I thank you for coming tonight. It's always a great conversation. I respect you immensely. It goes right back to the negotiations, and there's one point I want to clarify, and I'm sure you're the man to do it for me. And I think it's caused a lot of confusion between all of us, and it has to do with that negotiation itself. Because I know in the preamble of the Unit A contract and the preamble of the Unit B contract, they both say that they're the exclusive group that negotiates within those positions related to their bargaining unit. So Unit A's bargaining unit's preamble says that they only negotiate for themselves and other defined parties, and they specifically do not negotiate for Unit B. And I know in Unit B's preamble it says that they exclusively negotiate on their behalf, and they do not negotiate for Unit B, or nobody else negotiates for them. And I think a lot of the confusion for Unit B and other people involved is the fact when the school committee negotiated with the STA, it was the Unit A negotiating team, as opposed to members of Unit B being at the negotiation. And I think that's what's caused a lot of concern. I don't know if you could speak to that, how that would then count as a negotiation for the school committee?
Under Chapter 150E, which is Mass General Laws, Chapter 150E, which is the collective bargaining statute for public sector employees, the STA is the exclusive bargaining representative for both Units A and Unit B. So when we get a demand, so they have one president for the STA, and it has all the bargaining units they're under. I don't know if there are any other bargaining units under the STA. I believe it's only those two. That representation and that leadership is the only leadership with which the school committee and I can communicate with when it comes to when they assert their rights under that statute, under Chapter 150, which is what happened. Who they bring with the demand to bargain over the introduction of those positions, which we received sometime late in June, if I recall correctly. Who they bring to the bargaining table, we have no control over who they bring to the bargaining table. They, meaning, when I say they, I'm referring to the STA. Just as they can't predict or determine who we bring to the bargaining table. So when we arrived that night, because if my memory serves correctly, it was you, Mr. Soares, Dr. Ural, and I were the bargaining team that met with the STA the evening in response to their demand to bargain over those items. And it was at that meeting that you informed me that none of those people across the table were in Unit B. That's not for us to make that determination. That's an internal issue for the STA to deal with Unit B and Unit A in their internal operations. But when it comes to who we have a legal obligation under Chapter 150E is the exclusive bargaining representative, and that is the STA. The others are two bargaining units. They're not separate unions. They're separate bargaining units. The STA is the union.
And so even if the school
Even if their contract stipulates, I guess.
Because I was saying
but the contract stipulates, and I don't have them directly in front of me, but if I recall correctly also there, they identify that the Stoughton Teachers Association represents Unit B. So therefore, it is that association. Unit B is a bargaining unit within the association, within the STA.
Because I found it interesting, the contracts were signed by the school committee and Unit B representatives, the contracts themselves, as were Unit A's. So it appeared as if the school committee entered a contract with Unit B itself, with that particular piece agreeing to only negotiate with Unit B regarding positions. It's why I think
Having
I
not been
paused.
involved, having not been involved in prior negotiations, I don't know how the STA determines who or how it sends its representatives for the purposes of collective bargaining, the terms of a successor negotiation, collective bargaining agreement, and how that was then done and executed.
Yeah, I think that's caused a lot of confusion.
But when the STA sends a letter demanding to bargain, we have to respond to the STA, the association, not the individual bargaining units. Who the STA sends and whether there is an issue relevant to, regarding its representation of Unit A or Unit B, that's an internal issue for the association and not one for us.
Mr. Ford, I think she's trying to get your attention.
Well, it's, oh, you got the contract?
Yeah, yes, I have where it's saying that.
Just show it to the attorney.
Unit B.
Did her homework, huh?
I don't know what this is from. I can just tell you, I can't. No, I can't speak to it out of context. All I know is that the Stoughton Teachers Association, through what was then the Labor Relations Commission, now the Department of Labor Relations, has been identified as the inclusive bargaining unit representative for both bargaining units. So therefore, when the STA approaches the school committee, it approaches it on behalf of Unit A or Unit B. How it allows Unit B to negotiate is, again, an STA issue, not ours.
Right.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification.
Joe,
I'm not in a position to start interpreting the contracts at this point in time as they're coming up in this way. Just responding to your particular question is that letter that we responded to and we met for that collective bargaining session was in response to a letter that came from the STA president. It was a legitimate request by the STA for those purposes, and as I said, it is the exclusive bargaining representative, for that Unit A and for Unit B.
Can I ask, was Unit B ever allowed to enter the discussion once the STA made that request to bargain?
And if I may, Ms. Hussaini,
Yeah.
that's an internal STA, Unit
Okay.
A, Unit B issue.
Okay.
That is not one for the school committee
Okay.
or administration or or for me, to interfere with how it is that it's going to conduct its business. There may be dissatisfaction with that, but that's not something
Well,
that I
not
can
being part of the
speak to
bargaining
or to
process, I
address.
wasn't aware if that actually had happened, and thank you for the answer.
I just have a question for you. So who do they pay their dues to? The STA? The union dues?
That's my understanding.
I just wanted to also clarify something for Mr. Soares. The numbers I posted that show the raises or increases, they are accurate. Those are Dr. Rizzi's numbers, raises for that position from budget to budget to budget. What she is saying tonight is they are not actually the numbers that that person was paid. And I can't speak to that. But these are her numbers that she posted on the school website that the town meeting acted on and the school committee acted on. So, I did not make up any numbers. It's just they are all her numbers. Now, if there aren't any more discussion from the board, now would be a good time to make a motion to what... Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to mention is certain members of the finance committee is saying that we promised to fill these positions and we reneged on our words. It's not accurate on two counts. One is it's true that we were asked if we were going to fill these new fiscal 15 new positions, which are about, I think, maybe 18 positions altogether. And we said we have every intention of filling it. And that was true. And in fact, we did fill everything except the 3. The other part is they say, well, the school committee voted previous school committee voted to put these positions into the budget, and then the finance committee voted the budget. So, you guys are bound for it, bound with it. I disagree with that because if you just the school committee does the budget once and for all, and then why do you need the school committee to continue operating? The school committee has the responsibility to act on, look at the new developments and act as it deems necessary. So there was one more position which the superintendent mentioned at the last meeting. She said she did not fill the alternative education teacher for high school for $55,000 because that was contingent upon Dean of Discipline. So we had a conversation after that. I understand that is the current position of the Dean of Discipline person she intended to promote. So in that sense, that is not a new position. It sounds like it's counted twice on the budget. So that's why our budget surplus now is 3 times 88. That's, I think, 264 plus 55, 269, 319, something like that.
319.
So the question is, I will ask the superintendent what's her recommendation for doing with the money. Is that the right question to ask? Okay.
My recommendation is that the 3 Unit A, Unit B positions be filled. And that has been my recommendation all along. And that remains my recommendation to this day.
Okay.
And if I could just
Yes,
clarify
please.
one thing for Ms. Anokian. We all share your concern for having teachers in the classroom and students having a good teacher-student ratio. And we did, in fact, hire 2 new reading teachers this year. And looking at the budgets since 2008 and 9, when we lost the jobs that we lost and so on, other positions as well as teacher positions. But in that time, we've put back more than 25 teaching positions, including 8.4 in this year's budget, 3 in last year's, and then 14 the year before when we brought the teachers back into the budget that had been in the federal era money. So it is not, in fact, the case that that has been neglected. It's one of the things we balance with all kinds of other things. But your new reading teachers are, in fact, in place.
I
Mr. Soares.
actually, I did ask if a Wilson certified reading teacher was in the school that my daughter goes to, and I got the response that not yet. They're working on it, but not there yet.
I think if you ask again, you will see that the position has been filled in that school.
Okay.
Mr. Soares.
What is the shortfall from 2008 to now, as far as the teachers are concerned?
2008?
Was it 2008, whatever that date was that?
Well, the
you had to lay off teachers?
2008, 2009 years
Okay.
were the really bad years. So I don't actually have all those budgets in front of me. But in 2008-9, we lost over 40 positions, but not all of them were teachers. So I would have to look to tell you 20 how many of them were actually teachers that we lost.
So we're still short on teachers, obviously.
I'm not sure that that is in fact the case. We may have by now replaced them. If not, it's close. But I would have to look at the 40 positions we lost and make sure that we counted for each of the Unit A people and to make sure that it's the same number. But it's close.
Dr. Brown.
Sure. With that said, since these teachers have been hired, who's going to evaluate them now? We have now more teachers than we had prior. So now it looks like we're having more teachers to be observed, but less people to observe them. So I'm still having a problem. It's my turn still, so I'm still having a problem. So I'm still having a problem, and maybe I don't know how to add anymore, but if it's more teachers to be observed and there's less people, your quality education is not happening.
Well, that was addressed in that STA presentation.
I just want to make this
now
public.
the observation periods are shorter, and also it was discussed in detail.
Okay, can I continue then?
Yeah, please do.
No, the observation periods are not shorter. You need to take a day and go and walk the life of these people and see what they do for a living. And you'll see that the observation period is longer now. Our observation periods goes from September all the way into May. Then in the middle of that, we have to do a formative assessment, which takes them half them up all night, 24 hours, 3 or 4 times a week, and they don't sleep on Saturdays and Sunday. Trust me, I'm one of them. Now we have more teachers and less of them. So who's the burden going to fall on? What happened to this quality education we're trying to put out there to make us go from level 2 to level 1? If I can get an educated answer from you, I'll be happy. If I can't, I don't know.
So the committee looked at how many people can do the evaluations, how many teachers have to be evaluated. So that was
don't walk
in the
their shoes,
presentation.
though, I do.
Could I comment on that, please?
Yes.
'Cause I was in the room when that conversation took place, and it was a presentation by the Stoughton Teachers Association in which they defined what was required of our administrators in order to implement the new educator evaluation system. And their discussion focused exclusively on teacher observations. And the new observation system is much more complicated than simply conducting observations. And their focus was on the fact that the administrators are only required to do 2 observations per teacher now. And observations only had to be 5 minutes long. Well, the district requires 4, and if you look at the contract language, it actually states, I could read it to you, that it's 4 observations per year, unlike the 2 per year that were portrayed at that meeting. And also, if you think of what an administrator does now for evaluations, there's a self-assessment, there's goal setting, there's a formative evaluation, there's 4 observations per year, there's the evaluation of evidence, there's formative evaluations, there's a summative evaluation. The summative evaluation, instead of being based on simply a set of standards adopted by the school committee, is based on 4 discrete standards that defined by the Department of Education against independent rubrics, a student performance objective, a professional practice objective. It's going to be required goals. There's 6 required artifacts that they have to evaluate against. It's incredibly complicated. And when our administrative team did a rough estimate of the number of hours required to do the old evaluation process, it worked out to be just over 1,300 hours per year. When we did an estimate of what requires the new evaluation process, it's about 3,100 hours. So the amount of time dedicated to teacher evaluation is more than doubled in bringing this new piece online. And what we did this year is we added more teachers, but we didn't add more administrators. Right. If you look back over the last few years, we may have added 2 administrators, but we took away the capacity of the high school directors to do observations, which again increases the load. And if you look at the overall spending per student on administration in our school district, the most recent numbers from the Department of Ed, we spend $254 per student on administration, where the state average is $471 per student. So basically, we have an administration running at about half capacity compared to the state average. And we've been given an evaluation system that now requires us to more than double the amount of hours that we have to put in teacher evaluation, in addition to implementing the Common Core, in addition to writing new curriculum, in addition to the myriad of other state mandates that have come down upon us. In what it looks like, it just doesn't look to me to be fair.
It's not fair.
It's simple,
Well,
but that's my opinion.
It's actually 4 evaluations per cycle.
No, it's per school year for the contract.
Well, I brought the contract if we want to read the contract.
Well, we can discuss that later, but I'm pretty sure we agreed to
discuss
4
it in public.
evaluations
We want everybody to
I
hear
bother
this.
with facts.
per cycle.
I'll read it out of the signed contract the school committee signed, if you like, because I wrote it down here and I brought the contract with me. So
I didn't bring my marked up copy, but there was
I have the signed copy that was signed by the school committee.
Can I just take a look at it? I'll point to you that, see, if the teacher is doing well, there is a typo in the contract. If the teacher is doing well, it says, wait a minute, listen. If the teacher is doing well, you are supposed to do 4 evaluations per year, but if the teacher is not doing well, then you are supposed to do 2 per year.
Mr. Swartz,
Does
would
that
you like
make
to read
sense?
it?
No, it doesn't.
Give it to me for
I'll
a second.
answer it. Doctor, when you finish, I'd like to comment on that, please.
So there's a table in here that shows per cycle. And then the text, there is an inconsistency in the text, which says if the teacher is doing well, you are supposed to do it 4 evaluations per year. If the teacher is not doing well, then you are supposed to do 4 evaluations per cycle, which is 2 evaluations per year.
So an educator's overall rating is unsatisfactory must be observed according to the improvement plan and must include both unannounced and announced observations. The number and frequency of observations shall be determined by the evaluator, but in no case for improvement plans of 1 year should there be fewer than 1 announced and 4 unannounced observations. That's 2 paragraphs below the one I have.
So unfortunately, we didn't bring that sheet, but I gave it to Unit B.
If I could say one other thing with respect to this. As school committee, I think the expectation you should have of the school administration is we're never doing the minimum.
Never.
We're always doing what we need to do in order to be successful. And we are not, regardless of however this piece plays out, going to have our administrators do 2 observations per school year. It's 4. It's always been 4. And in the templates that went out this year, it's 4. And even if, say, this piece is resolved back to 2 per year, it's still going to be 4 because 2 does not provide a clear picture as to what's taking place in the classroom. So even if there is a minimum standard, I would hate to think that the school committee's expectation of the school administration is that we strive to meet the minimum standard in any given piece, because we're better than that.
Dr. Odom.
Mr. Soares raised his hands first.
Oh, no,
I was
she's
next.
the first.
Okay.
Discrimination in front of the camera. But anyhow, it says 4 there. That's 4 in the classroom. Okay, we observe them in the cafeteria. We observe them as far as professional participation in professional development meetings. We are observing all the time. We walk in the door with observation radar, and it starts from the moment we walk in the door until we leave every single day. It may be 4 in the classroom, but it's an ongoing thing. These people are eating, breathing, and drinking this stuff from September all the way to May, nonstop. They don't even have a life, trust me.
And I'd like to say that ultimately we respect the decision of the committee. The school committee is entrusted as the governing board of the school district, as elected by the community of Stoughton. And whatever the expectation is, we will meet it. But I do want you to know that.
The school committee actually did look at the number of people that can do the evaluations, and then the number of evaluations that need to be done, and that there was plenty of evaluator time that was available.
When did the committee look at that? I was not part of that.
And I do this for a living.
You had the handout.
No.
That was presented at you were present at the meeting, Ms. Hussein.
Dr. Erlen.
Mr. Soares.
The story.
Dr. Brown, if I may ask her a question?
Yes, you can, sir, at any point.
Dr. Brown, you stated that you're observing at any time.
Yes.
Does that say in the contract that you are to observe at any time?
We just want what is best. We want quality education to go on. So although it only says 4 times, as professionals, we go above and beyond.
Okay.
So therefore, we are always observant. That's what we went to school for. This is what we came as professionals to be, and this is what we do best. So although the paper says 4, it is ongoing. I mean, you know, you have a teacher in a meet, and you have one of the 4 standards is professional culture. So we want to see how they interaction professional. We're just evaluating from the moment we walk in the door to the moment we leave.
Well, I commend your tenacity.
Thank you, and you all need to be commended also.
Chair declares a 5-minute recess for nature break.
Woohoo.
Okay, we are back. So with all that discussion, do we have a motion on the table?
I move the superintendent's recommendation to fund the positions.
I second.
Okay, any more discussion?
No, we had enough.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
Aye. No.
Okay, so
He
we
almost
got
had a
the
fit when he
motion.
thought she voted wrong.
Motion is defeated. Is there another motion?
I would like to make a motion that we do not fund,
No, I thought you wanted,
I'm sorry.
we were going to return it. What,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson, what would be the correct motion at this moment?
I'm not sure what it is that he's trying to
Well, I would
achieve.
make a motion to return the money to however we term it. Do we term it to the general fund? I'm not sure how we return it. Or return it
We
to
need to
some.
say whether to return it to, where to return it to Finance Committee reserves or stabilization fund?
What you're doing, if I may, if I understand
Yes,
this correctly, you're taking the money from the line item in the budget in which they were placed to fund these positions.
That's correct.
So what you, as a school committee, have to do is remove it from that line item, place it in another part of your school budget until such time as whatever the town meeting would ultimately do on what I understand the Finance Committee did last night. And I'm just going from what I heard earlier this evening relative
So
to
the
the
Finance
action.
Committee decided to remove the money and put it into Finance Committee reserve fund.
No, they decided to open the budget, the warrant at town meeting.
Because
They
town-
don't
it's-
make that decision.
Exactly. It's town meeting that has to take that
But
actual
no,
action.
they actually said that they were going to put it to the reserve fund, Finance Committee reserve.
That's not what the motion was at the end.
No, that may not have been what the motion was, but the discussion was around that.
That's not what that's
I'm
not
not,
what the vote
I'm not
understand
was.
that,
town
and I
council,
just
so I
agreed
can't
with you.
speak to that. But my understanding is that it's the town meeting that would have the authority to do that. Only the town meeting would have the authority to do that. That's something that you could place to town council, but that's my understanding. So at this point in time, you have control over your budget,
Okay.
and my understanding is that since the motion that was made by Ms. Husseini failed, that to fund those particular positions, the next step for the committee is to move it from the line item that is in, I forget,
It's an instruction.
instruction, thank you, is to move it from that line item so it's not there to fund those particular positions.
Okay.
Can I have a question on that? Because if this committee has already voted not to fund those positions, what would be the point of moving it out of that line item before town meeting acts on it? Because the superintendent doesn't have authorization to hire those positions anyway, and moving it to another line item, I'm not sure what that would accomplish.
It would just take it out of that line item for the purposes of funding the positions, so.
But she's already
I
been
understand
told
what
she
you're
can't
saying,
fund
Ms.
it.
Husseini, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that's,
So my question to you then, Dr. Earl, is why would there need to be a vote on anything if the vote is already directing the superintendent that she cannot spend those funds on those positions?
Maybe I have a communication problem with Mr. Emerson, but what he said is if the position is not funded, then that's why we put in, I put that financial transfers based on, I thought that was his recommendation, to transfer it to another area.
another area within
Or,
your budget. What I was hearing you say was moving over to the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, which is not.
Which is not good.
Not your authority. Your authority is only to work within your own budget.
So we could move it to the contingency fund we have in
be an
out-of-state
option.
tuition. Or Ms. Husseini asked a question, if we leave it, what's the harm of leaving the money in the current place?
If the superintendent's already been told that she cannot.
Cannot fill
There
those
is
particular
no
positions.
harm because obviously I will not fill the positions given the school committee's decision on that matter. So the money, whether it stays in instruction or goes to another place, will not be spent on anything.
Or we could move it to the special education contingency, which at the end of the year, we return it to Finance Committee anyways.
Why?
Is that what the motion you would like to make,
Just
Mr.
leave
Sullivan?
it,
No, hold on.
just leave it where it is. and
I'm a little confused.
You always know that.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
and I trust Dr. Rizzi, that if we put it in some place, she says she's not going to touch it. But what other places can we put it? It's just a question, and I'm confused.
Well,
By
as
budget,
Dr. Earl said, as we could place on the other piece, would if it, that instructional line item is one over which the superintendent has, because it's basically funding all of the employment positions which are under the authority of the superintendent. So it leaves it there for those types of expenditures. That is, she would not have to come back to the school committee for those movement amongst those positions.
Right, but there was
However,
never- it
clearly
is-
on these positions,
Right.
she's already indicated
And
now
it has
that she's
never
not going
been
to
the
be using
case.
it to fill these positions.
It's never been the case, nor will it be, that I would create a position in any circumstance without consulting the school committee. We've done our hiring for this year. There may be one or two teaching positions. I think we're actually done with our hiring. So I simply will not post and fill these jobs.
Okay, and that quantity is 319,000, if I'm not mistaken?
Well, I would have to look into that because the Unit B position is attached to hiring of a half teacher, and so I can give you an exact number. I have no reason to think that isn't the number, but I would want to check on that to be absolutely positive.
Okay, and when would I get that answer?
Sometime in the next few days.
Okay.
Now, I guess, just 1 second, Ms. Hussaini. The alternative education teacher, you said you were not going to fill it.
That is correct.
So that answers your question, Mr. Soares. It's the amount is $319,000 because that one is listed as a new position for $55,000. Ms. Hussaini.
I would like for the three who are voting to remove this money to please explain to me, and I'm really not trying to be mean, but during the last budget cycle, when Dr. Rizzi returned money to FinCom, she was crucified publicly by the two of you running for office and by you, Dr. Urel. So why now are we returning money or trying to return money to FinCom? I just fail to see what's different about this situation.
Well, I can answer part of it, and I think Mr. Soares also wants to answer it. I have asked on multiple occasions to Dr. Rizzi, I said, if these positions are not funded, is there any other place you would like to use it for? And she said no. You know, if you leave it where it is, I mean, I was looking at the year-end report. We had so many transfers throughout the year. So as long as it stays in 2000 instruction line, so that gets moved around. So I'm going to be asking some questions when we come to closing the year-end reports. If we just leave it there, it just gets moved from position to position. So that's why I would feel a lot better just to leave the money as the contingency fund, and
But the whole
that way we
discussion's
know
been
it's
about
safe.
giving it back to the town.
Yeah, because I tried multiple times. Dr. Rizzi doesn't have a place to use the money for.
Twisting words.
Okay, Mr. Soares.
When you said that we complained about giving money back, when was this?
During all of the debates and the campaigns, and every going into town meeting once you were elected, it was truly being very,
okay.
very angry to Dr. Rizzi towards that.
No, actually, you're misspeaking, Ms. Hussaini, because the criticism was not returning the money for the contingency fund, but returning the $780,000, which involved instruction. The budget money allocated for instruction.
And this
then
involves
money
instruction. That's why I have a
mon-
hard time with it.
There was some special
Right.
money in there, too.
Money allocated for building repairs, that was returned. So the criticism was towards that. So I know there is a group of people that is trying to misrepresent that. But according to Dr. Rizzi, $200-something thousand were returned because that was in the contingency. But the rest of the $780,000, so we were trying to figure out why it was returned and not spent on instruction or building repairs as it was originally budgeted for.
And you have failed to explain to me why this, which is instruction, and that you're looking to give back to the town is different. And like I said, maybe I'm dumb, I don't see it.
You're not dumb, you're very smart. I just explained to you that instruction, if you leave it there without the school committee approval or without seeking for the school committee vote, the money can be moved from position to position to position.
She just said she wasn't going to do that, and she's having an impeccable reputation. She hasn't done anything like that in the past, so I don't understand.
Okay, so what's the will of the board?
They're going to vote with you.
Mr. Soares, I mean, Mr. Emerson. Mr. Dr. Brown, that's really unprofessional.
Not Mr.
And,
Mrs. Erdem.
I said
Don't call me
Dr.
Mr. Dr. Brown. Mrs. Erdem. I'm not Mr. Dr. Brown.
Hope
you all see all this disrespectful stuff he's doing to me, right?
It's not right the way
But do you all hear call me Mr. Dr. Brown? Thank you. Nothing wrong with my ears, and stop twisting words.
I was talking Mr. Emerson and then
Mr. Dr. Brown.
Then I
Okay,
said Dr.
Mrs.
Brown.
Erdem.
Mr. Emerson,
Earrings.
so what is your recommendation?
I can give you options. I don't make those recommendations as to how the board is to act and to use it, to go forward with that. Your options are, as just what's been presented tonight, is as Ms. Hussaini has suggested, is that with the vote, the way that it just went on her motion, is to leave it in the instructional line item, or to transfer it out of the instructional line item into another part of your budget. Those, to me, are the only options that you have before you, because you're working within your budget, not dealing with outside.
So since you started making the motion, what would you like to do?
We'll leave it in the line item. Dr. Izzi is going to give us, within a couple of days, the total quantity of the dollars. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I believe that Dr. Izzi will not use it or move it or do anything with it.
Okay. Is that agreeable to everybody?
It's agreeable with me.
So there is no motion.
Isn't that what he was just?
Oh, okay, yeah, I think that's good.
But
Go
I'm
ahead.
not sure, yeah, so is it to leave it in the instruction line as is?
The motion is to leave the money in the instruction line as is, but not to be used.
With the intention of returning $319,000 to town at the end of the year, or X will be specified later, right?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Who's making the motion?
Me too. I'm trying to figure it out, too.
I'm making the motion.
What's the motion, please?
Okay?
Mary will read it to us.
To leave the funding for the 3 new positions in the instruction line, but not to be used with the intention to return to the town.
Exactly.
Actually, that's 4 new positions.
That's 4 positions, yes.
So is there a second?
I second.
If there is no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
So you like to move the money?
No, I'd like to spend the money on the positions as I moved.
Dr. Brown, I didn't hear your vote.
No.
Okay.
This paper out of the way.
Okay, next item on the agenda is, thank you, Mr. Emerson. If there is no more questions, he has a family to go to.
Thank you, Mr. Emerson.
I do too.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank
You're
you.
quite welcome. You all have a good one.
Now, when
Let's see.
can I make my little speech?
It's only
This is about negotiations?
No, this is about.
Unit peoples?
Let it go. We'll let it go.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know you wanted to make a speech. All right.
Next time I'll send you an email.
Traffic safety around schools. Is that correct, Mrs.
That's number 2. Okay.
We're on 2?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. So after all this, we are still in item number 2. I think the rest will go really fast. Item number 2 is traffic safety around schools. We started discussing this at the last meeting, and we have found out that there is a traffic safety committee or task force, and there is a group of people on it, and we found out Mark Tisdale, the town engineer, is the chair of that group. And the town manager, it was appointed by the previous actually 2 town managers ago. So we were trying to determine, what kind of, I'm sorry?
Previous town manager, Mr. Feaster.
Previous was, I thought, Mr.
Feaster.
It wasn't Mr. Crimmins?
No, it was Mr. Feaster.
Okay. So I just got confused about
Oh, he
so,
was right. Wait a minute. Hold on.
So Mr.
Feaster, then there was Crimmins, and then there was...
Other way around.
I
was it?
remember
Crimmins and
Feaster,
Okay.
Crimmins. So okay. And then we asked the question: can public go to these meetings? And then can the school committee members go to these meetings? And Dr. Rizzi sort of wasn't sure, but she thought that we couldn't, but she was going to check. And in fact, she checked and told us that they are staff meetings and they are not open to observers. But she also suggested that I speak to town manager privately about this. So we reached out, Joe and I tried to reach out to the town manager. I wrote him I went to his office, but he wasn't available to talk to me. So I wrote an email to him, which says, you brought your reading glasses?
Okay. Dear Mr. Hartman, this is an invite Town Manager Mark Tisdale and you to speak at next school committee meeting, which is held 7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014. The topic is traffic safety around Stoughton schools. As you can see from the enclosed agenda, it will be discussed early. Oh, I'm glad he didn't.
You want me to read it?
Early
It's too small.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry. This is to
But it's not that
invite
early.
town engineer Mark Tisdale and you to speak at the next school committee meeting, which will be held at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014. The topic is traffic safety around Stoughton schools. As you can see from the enclosed agenda, it will be discussed early on so that town employees can go home at a reasonable hour. From the school committee discussion at the last meeting, it became evident that Traffic Task Force was formed approximately 2 years ago and has been meeting with Mark Tisdale as the chair. It has also become evident that the Traffic Task Force meetings are not open to public or to the school committee members. I further understand that the task force does not keep minutes of its meetings. It will be helpful to the committee when Mr. Tisdale explains what the task force accomplished since its inception, what else is planned, and what still needs to be done. Additionally, I'm requesting a face-to-face meeting with you and Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Soares will also be in attendance. I can be available anytime on Monday, September 22nd. Please advise. And we got an email from Mr. Hartman's secretary. It says, good morning. This is from Reggie K. I'm emailing you to inform that Mike will not be in attendance at the school committee meeting, and also to let you know Mr. Tisdale, our town engineer, is on vacation and out of state until next week. So we also asked for a face-to-face meeting, but I guess we'll continue reaching out to Mr. Hartman and Mr. Tisdale, and I will put it on the agenda again next meeting, and we'll get some answers. Any discussion on this topic?
Well, could I have that for the record?
Of course. So you don't have the answer?
No.
But you have the my original. Okay.
Please.
All right. Next item is Special Education Department Parent Satisfaction Survey.
I have a handout. You have in your possession and have had the compiled responses of the Special Education Department Parent Survey. Those numbers are included in your packet, and they were included in your packet last week. And you can see the questions that were asked and the responses that have been compiled.
I'm sorry, Dr. You said this was in our packet the last meeting?
The piece of paper in your packet is the survey compiled responses. So you'll see the
No,
column
I'm sorry.
with
I'm sorry,
these,
yes.
and then you have the column with the percentages.
I apologize, yes.
Okay, so
You're
there
right.
were some questions about the genesis of this and what it means, who responded to it, what was the purpose, what was the thinking behind it, and so on. So what I have just handed you is the material that goes out to parents so the parents receive this survey whenever they have a correspondence from the special ed department, which includes either a team meeting, so if they are at an IEP meeting, if they receive amendments, or if they receive requests to test, or with paper that goes out related to the special education process. Now, the team process is the core of special education. The decisions that are made related to a child's services are done with a team of professional people and parents. What kinds of services are decided upon, the amounts of those services, the analysis of whether or not they're working, whether things need to be modified, it all comes back around to the team process. So in order to determine what the experience of parents was like in their interactions, including the team meetings with the special education department, this survey with the accompanying text that you see has been sent to every parent who's had an interaction of that sort with the special education department from April to June, and the responses were gathered and collected from April until August. So the piece of the material that the parents get says the team meeting is important in establishing and maintaining open communication between home and school. Therefore, your feedback about your recent team meeting is important to us as we strive to improve our partnership with you. Our collaboration is essential for your child's success. In an ongoing effort to ensure that our team meetings are as informative, comprehensive, and effective as possible, we're asking for your feedback. And we believe that this process should be a collaborative effort between the parents and educators. Since we value your opinion of the meeting, we'd appreciate if you could take a few minutes to complete the survey and return it with your child's IEP. Your input will be used only to study the IEP process, and thank you for helping us provide supportive and informed team meetings. And then, with each survey, goes out this way of contacting the CPAC so that parents know how, if they wish to be a part or go to any of the events sponsored by the CPAC, how they could get in touch with folks. And then you'll look at the template, which is actually the same as the survey that you've received, but it shows the blank so that each parent returns this, and then all of those are added up together, which is how we get the percentages that you see in the one that you received a couple of meetings ago. Our district, at the present time, at any given time, has somewhere between 650 and 700 students who are on IEPs. That's been approximately the number for some time. So over the 10-month school year, approximately 65 to 70 IEPs are sent out a month. And so during the period of April to June, approximately 200 of these surveys were sent out, and the response rate was 30%. So this is a voluntary survey. No one is required to take it. 30% return is actually quite good. Those of us who have done dissertations know that the return rate on surveys can be as low as 5%. So 30% is a pretty decent return rate. And so those are the people who chose to respond to that survey. Knowing that there are other aspects of it, with the team meeting being the core of special education, this was the area that they decided to sample first. Knowing that there are other things that might be areas that parents want to weigh in, the administration is going to be working with Ms. Campbell, who's the current CPAC president to design a different kind of Survey Monkey, or using one of the online tools to make a different kind of survey available. So they will be working on that, and that will be coming out sometime in the fall. And in the meantime, parents who have team meetings are going to continue to get this survey so that the department can continue to get a sense of how people's experience with the process is going.
May I ask her some questions?
Yes, please.
Dr. Rizzi, when they send out the survey, do you have a name? They have to sign a name on it? Or does it come back anonymous?
Well, it goes out, it looks like this, and when the parent returns it, they return it with their IEP, because when they sign the IEP, they have to send that back. So it is not necessarily, if you want to put your child's name or yours, you can do, but it is not required that one do so.
Okay, another question. Now, I'm assuming what you said is about, I took 70%. So 70% of 700 people is 21 people. That's basically, I guess, what you've been getting back from the surveys.
70%. They got back about 70 surveys from 200 IEPs sent.
I'm sorry, my math is wrong.
Over the period of April to
By
June.
70%. I apologize, my math is wrong. It's 210 people. I apologize.
Approximately
Mr.
200
Ford,
people. Yes.
You didn't pick on me.
30% is a great number, actually.
Excellent.
These IEP meetings, they're the teachers, the extra help, and the
All
can't
team
think of her
meetings,
name at all.
when a special education team meeting is held, there are certain people who must be at the team meeting. So there's going to be the principal of the school, there will be the general education teacher of the child, and in a high school situation, there would be several teachers because different subject areas.
Right.
There would be the special education teacher that services that child. And then there would be, if the child gets additional services such as speech or occupational therapy or counseling, then any of the services that are on the IEP, that professional would also be present at the table. The parents are a required member of the team. And then if you have a student who's in a sub-separate classroom and may not have a lot of interaction with general education students, then the teacher from that program would come. But there are usually anywhere, it's not uncommon to have a half a dozen people at the table, and then it just depends on how many services the child gets. But anybody who works with a child who's on an IEP will be at that table with a report on how that child is doing and on those services.
Now, just
I believe they also have goals to where they want your child to.
And part of the IEP is, it's a very structured document, and there are assessments from the teachers who work with the children, and then there are goals, and the goals are all measurable, and then you have progress on how the goals are being met, and so there are quarterly reports on those, and occasionally there'll be meetings in between the yearly meeting if services need to be adjusted and so on.
Just give it a general, so people don't understand.
Now, IEP stands for individual?
Individual Education Program. And any student eligible for special education services gets one.
I know it says down here optional, student name, parent name. You have any idea of how many parents put their name on these?
No, but from the ones that have been returned, I can get you that number.
I would appreciate that.
I will not ask people's, I would prefer not to share people's names, but I can get you the number of people who have chosen to put their name on.
Anytime I ask you for something, I do not want to see people's names.
Number of names. Okay.
With names. I think that's important.
Any other? I had some questions, and also some parents sent me some questions, so I'd like to go over those. One of the common questions is, whether the confidentiality was guaranteed. And what was the purpose of this? So I see it on the first page of the Dr. Rizzi's handout. If you look at the third paragraph, it says, since we value your opinion of the meeting, we would appreciate if you could take a few minutes to complete this survey and return it with your child's IEP. So that sort of blows the idea that people had, they thought it was going to be confidential from the special ed department. And then the next one explains the purpose. Your input will be used only to study the IEP process. So thank you for helping us to provide supportive and informed team meetings. So from this, people think that they have to return their survey with the child's IEP, and the purpose of the survey is to only look at the study of the IEP process. So the next question is, so there was, what were they measuring? I guess that sort of explains it. One question is, who developed this survey form, and how was it developed?
There are groups of special education directors, and they meet together on a regular basis, just like the superintendents and assistant superintendents meet together on a regular basis.
You're talking about different districts?
The special education directors of different districts meet together. And so they ask each other and share things. So our special education director asked for a number of districts, other SPED directors, to provide templates of surveys that they used. And so they looked at a number of different templates and designed one that they thought would work for Stoughton based on the examples of ones that were already being used in other districts.
Okay. And the next question is, was there any involvement in the process, in the both in terms of how the survey was prepared and also tabulation of the results? Was there any involvement from Special Education Parent Advisory Council?
No, the tabulation was done by staff, and that is necessary in order to maintain confidentiality of anybody who does put their names on. This was a staff working document for the purpose of informing the staff of how they were doing it in their IEP process. The parents, any of them who were given the survey, would certainly have had an opportunity to weigh in that way.
So when you say staff, it's the special education department people?
Correct.
Was it the director or the secretary?
Well, the secretary would open the IEPs,
yeah,
and then the director and her assistant would compile the results.
Okay. Next question is, how many were given out?
And as I think I said before, over the period of April to June, approximately 210 pieces of communication, IEPs, and there are other things, N1s and N2s, that are requests to test and so on. So approximately 210 were sent out, and with every single piece of paper that was sent out during that time, a survey went, resulting in about 200 or so going, and a return rate of 69.
So you got 69 back?
Yes.
Okay. And the question is how they were distributed, so that was sent out with the IEPs?
Or with N1s or 2s.
What's on N1 and N2?
As I just said, there are other forms that are requests to test, or statements of whether or not a child is eligible for special education services. Anything that would be generated after a team meeting. So a paper response to a parent that would come after a team meeting, which would give them an opportunity to talk about that experience.
I never, so this is a new for this year, for the first time?
So that the survey was developed and was given out between April and June of this year. And the results were compiled between April and August as they returned.
So this is new for this year?
Yes.
That wasn't done before, okay. Says, were they given to everyone who had IEP or team meeting during months indicated? If not, why not?
The
So
answer
it
is
was
yes.
Yes. Okay.
I have a question, Dr. Arnold, on this also.
Let me finish my questions.
I'm going to let you finish, sir.
Thank you. How many of each grade level given out and returned?
I'm not sure what the grade levels of all the students' IEPs were, but there's generally a cross-section in any given month. IEP meetings come up. It's not as though secondary schools happen in one time of year, elementary in another. So the children who get IEPs can be anything from 3 to 22 years old.
So in here there is a box. It says which information best describes your meeting. Grade level, pre-K, elementary, middle, high school, and then type initial annual. So I would like to see what was the information for those. I'd like to see that tabulated.
Yeah. So you're asking to know how many
Yeah, just a
grade
table.
levels?
Table, you know, like you have these attributes here on the second page. It says which information best describes your meeting. So I like to see a table. In the first column, you have pre-K, elementary, middle.
I understand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what was the purpose you developed?
No, I don't want
Surveys, returned, surveys distributed, AP meetings. Okay, one last question from parents is, what is the plan to take action in regards to the data collected?
This whole survey was done and as it clearly states here, as a working document for the department. They have not prepared a report of that sort, nor do I think it's appropriate to ask them for one. They certainly have gotten a sense of the level of satisfaction and the areas in which people are more or less satisfied. And because they've asked for these particular areas, that gives them a sense of which areas are most important to address and how.
Okay,
I think that answer is essentially self-evident.
thank you. Dr. Brown?
Sure. So now that we did all that, and I'm glad you answered all the parents, we need to look at the success of this. You know, if you're looking at the survey, now we can look at the numbers. The majority of the answer are to be very positive. So we might want to talk about the positivity of this instead of picking it apart. If you want me to read, I can read.
Actually, I liked it. That's why I asked
nice.
to put it on the agenda so that
nice.
the special education
I'm not saying anything
director
negative. I'm not saying anything
can
negative.
come here and explain it.
Yeah, I'm not saying
But
anything negative.
you know, Dr. Rizzi, I think, answered all the questions.
Dr. Bizzi, this is very positive, and if this is what
Yes.
you all are doing, I'm very proud of you.
In general, people have been very satisfied
Yeah,
with
they
their
are
experience.
satisfied, especially by this. Something positive out of this sometime.
Could I just make a quick comment?
Yes, please.
You know, I'd just like to thank Ms. Tucker for taking the time to put together a survey. And when
Yeah.
nobody actually asked her to do this, and this was just something she was doing as part of her job to try to gauge how parents felt about the IEP process, which is the core of the special education program. And this was never meant to be a public document. It was never meant to be an evaluation of her program per se by the superintendent, myself, or the school committee. It was just something she did on her own to try to gauge how parents felt about the relationship they had with the team, and if they felt the team was responsive in meeting their needs, and it was someplace where they felt like they were included in the process. And I think that needs to be recognized, that it was just on our own volition in trying to do a better job and better serve the community of Stoughton that this took place. And the results were spectacular. I just wanted to commend her on taking the time to do it, and also on delivering when it came to providing these IEP meetings so that she got such a good response from the parents. And it's arguably the special education director's job is the most difficult job in the school district. And I think this is just a validation of the fact that our special education department and the director in particular are doing a good job. So I just wanted to congratulate
I appreciate your comments, but the way this document came to light is superintendent introduced it as a part of the public comments. And you know, I like, you know, when you give us a piece of information I like to have the context on it, so because you know, anybody can provide a table and say, you know, this is the data we got. And I'm glad it came out. I'm glad we clarified all these questions. And in the future, you know, before the school department introduces a document like that, I like it to be a complete and complete information. So that was the intention of putting it on the agenda, and also giving an opportunity to Ms. Tucker to shine, but she didn't come. Okay, the next item on our agenda is fiscal. So item 4 we did. Item 5, fiscal 14 financial transfers.
I am going to pass out a slightly revised version of this because the business office did a little more work on it after our agenda meeting. So there are 2 sheets that will look like the ones that you have, but there will be just a couple of changes, and I'll show you what they are.
Dr. Rizzi, do you want to discuss both the closing of the books and financial transfers?
It's the same conversation,
Okay,
really.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Did I get this? No. There you go.
So these transfers are being requested to finish the books for FY14 because there were some lines that were over and some lines that were under. And so these transfers would move $1,324.81 from the instruction line to legal expenses where there's a shortfall. $4,176.35 from instruction to unemployment. And we didn't know till late in the year exactly what the unemployment costs were going to be because they come in by the month. And then $56,223.73 from instruction back to special education tuition. And once those transfers are accomplished, then our books will be closed and they will be balanced, and the department will return to the town $300,780.20, and that will close our FY14 budget.
Who's going to complain now?
Is there any discussion or questions? I had some questions. Now these, I'm talking about this sheet with the budget.
Yep.
So these are with respect to the original budget or with respect to the adjusted budget with the the transfers between the accounts?
The bottom line will be the same, but the money will be placed in the lines to make all of the lines come out even.
I don't think I got an answer to my question, so let me pose it again, a different way. So for example, we say instruction $277,882 $87. So that was based on that money that we did not spend on instruction. Was that based on the budget that the town meeting approved last year, or that was after we made all the transfers between the accounts?
After, but the bottom line remained the same. So where you see the numbers in parentheses, so administration, that's where the legal money is. That's short by $1,324.81. The instruction line has a balance in it. So if you approve the transfer, then the money will go from instruction to that legal line. And also to fixed charges, which is unemployment, and special ed tuition, which is the 56,223. So the bottom line will remain the same, but the money will go from the lines that there's extra to the lines where there is under.
Right.
But the amount in the end is the same.
I understand that. The bottom line is the same.
Yes.
But the instruction, for example, I remember, if I remember correctly, at one point through the fiscal 13-14 year, we took out a substantial amount of money from instruction and put it to somewhere else.
What you did was you took some money from the special ed contingency and put it into instruction.
Okay, so that
And
one
not
now is
all
we are
of-
returning.
Yes,
Okay.
because, for instance, just to give you one of the positions, early childhood coordinator, that money was moved for, that person wasn't hired until later in the year. So it's some of that is money going back to tuition.
I remember we removed, I'll check it for the next meeting, maybe you can check it too. I remember we removed a substantial amount of money from the instruction line and put it somewhere else, and then there was like an outcry from the teachers saying, oh, they are spending our raise money or something like that. But I'll check back and then we'll bring it up next meeting. I was looking at this year-end closing report. So I wish Maria was here. Maybe you could answer it. So I'm looking at.
I would like to get together with Maria and to go over some of these things.
Yeah, it's also good for the school committee. Like, for example, if I look at page, let's turn to page 10. There are many cases like this. Top of the page, we got not the first line. Are everybody at page 10?
Nope, not yet. We're getting there. I'm there.
Everybody there? Did you
Yep,
find it? Greg?
I'm there. I'm there.
So at the top, I'm looking at, there is one line that says Department of Business Technology. I'm not looking at that, but there are a number of entries. It says teacher salaries, and then there is the budget, and then the adjustment, and then the remainder, the third column after the title. So the budget for teacher salaries was for that department of, I just picked one department, computer technology. The budget was $245,000, and then it was $245 was taken out of it.
That was paid to the teachers.
No, that's not what it is. It's the those are the adjustments. The
adjustment was the salaries got paid to the teachers. So that's why all those are zeroed out at the end, the budget balance, the remainder, so.
I thought the adjustments is the transfers.
No.
Where do I see the transfers in there? Because I asked that question before, and I thought the answer was the adjustments for the transfers.
The transfers that you did, which I remember the one we took the money out of the special education contingency and moved it into instruction for various purposes. Unless you did a transfer at a meeting, there are no transfers to be accounted for. And when those were done, the money would have been moved from one line to another line, and it would have been reflected in that month when you got that month's report. The reason all the salary lines are zeroed out and the number is subtracted from the amount that was budgeted is because that money was paid to the teachers.
So what is the GL budget then?
That's the general ledger.
So how is it different than regular budget on the first column?
The budget is the budget that you approved, and then it gets put into the general ledger to pay the teachers and other expenses.
Okay, well, let's, for the sake of argument, look at the next one. It says just under the Department of Computer Technology, there's teacher salaries. It says budget $193,000 or $194,000. You see that?
I do.
And then next one is adjustment minus 45,000. And then GL budget 148. And if you look at the budget balance, is 0.
Because all of these were salaries that were paid to the teachers.
But I thought you said the salaries paid are shown in the adjustment column.
Well, so I don't know why some are carried over and some of them just show zeros at the top. So I can certainly find that out for you.
Yeah,
But these are the teachers' salaries that have been paid to the teachers over the course of the year. And why the budget balance is 0.
So Mr. Soares and I were looking for an appointment to meet with Ms. Hortarita, so this could be part of that, or if the whole committee is interested, we could ask her to come and explain to the whole committee.
I think you and I should talk about that at some other point in time, not tonight.
I'm involved in that.
Okay. All right. So you got the we got the transfers. What is the superintendent's recommendation?
I'd recommend that you would make these 3 transfers, and that will clean up the lines that have a deficit from the lines where there is an overage, and then we will be able to close the budget for FY14.
Is there a motion?
I move the superintendent's recommendation.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next item is item number 6, MCAS update.
Yes, and it's really kind of too bad that this is coming late in the meeting, where some people might be tired, I certainly am, and where some folks may not necessarily be watching. But we have extremely good news for our district, for our administrators, for our teachers, for our students. And this is just a little sheet from the Department of Ed website for any, oh, you want one too, so that you can have that in your packet. We printed that off today. So I'm going to read a brief statement and then talk about this a little bit. We had our embargo on the scores that our students achieved lifted on Friday at 11 o'clock. And we got extremely good news. The state's headline, when the state released their numbers and said the numbers are out now, the state headline, the Boston Globe, and numerous other places was, MCAS scores flat for 2014. That is not the news in Stoughton. So I'm proud to announce that for the first time in the history of the Stoughton schools, 4 of 7 schools have achieved level 1 status in the Massachusetts State Accountability System. According to the state website, all Massachusetts schools and districts are classified in one of 5 accountability and assistance levels, with the highest being level 1 and the lowest being level 5. And districts with a majority of level 1 schools are among the highest achieving in the Commonwealth. Each district is classified according to the level of its lowest rated school. So I'm also very proud to announce that the Stoughton district has risen to level 2 from level 3, because after 3 years of planning and hard work, the other schools in our district are now all level 2, with no schools remaining in level 3. So for those people who were
complaining,
basically the plans have worked. Thanks to tremendous dedication and commitment from the administration, teachers, and students at the Gibbons Elementary School, along with their district support team, they have achieved the monumental accomplishment of going from a level 3 to a level 1 in just 1 year.
Impossible.
Congratulations to all of you. Last year we had 1 school, the South Elementary, that entered into level 1 status. And this year, with the Hanson re-entering level 1 and Stoughton High School attaining level 1 for the first time, we've gone from one level 1 school in 2013 to 4 level 1 schools in one short year. The West School, which achieved a level 2 status last year, has continued in its improvement, and so along with the middle school and the Daw Elementary rounds out our complements of schools at level 2. An excellent place to be, and it's the result of constant, steadfast planning and improvement over the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, when I took this job, I told the school committee and the community that the process of educational change takes 5 to 7 years. It involves vision, expertise, planning, staging, consistency of good educational leadership, and careful budgeting to put the building blocks of a strong system in place. And we had to preserve the most important things during the recession and then gradually replace the things that we lost during that time. And we chose from a list of what we knew would create a world-class education for every student over time, based on what we could afford, balanced with what we needed to build and build on. And we can now see in concrete terms the very real fruits of that labor. It has worked. For parents, this achievement demonstrates that the Stoughton schools are constantly improving, and the staff never rests in their goal to bring the best possible education to every child all of the time. The investments in small class size, small group remediation and enrichment, consistent materials, alignment to the new mass curriculum frameworks, commitment to all of the important elements of education, and those include art, music, physical education, middle school electives, writing, technological literacy, and especially higher order thinking, are working. We will get this information out to colleges and universities so that they are competing for our graduates. And I will just digress for a moment to say one little anecdote. A parent took their junior child to Quinnipiac College for a visit this past weekend, 24 hours after the scores came out, and the admissions person at that school said, I know where you're from. You are from Stoughton. Believe me, we noticed.
Very good.
Very good.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Citizens of Stoughton who don't have children in the schools, these improvements have meaning for you as well. Better schools mean better property values and more investment in growing businesses. Kids with strong, bright futures are better neighbors. Good schools attract young families who want to live here and become part of a vibrant community in which we all want to live, a destination community where people want to settle and establish their lives and their families. We will share this information with realtors so that they know what a strong selling point our school system is. Stoughton is on the verge of so many major and important changes, and this significant improvement in our school system is going to work with all of them and support them all. The new library, the high school building, the work of the Master Planning Committee, the work of revitalizing the State Theater and downtown, they're all moving forward. And in this case, along with the support of dedicated residents, so we're contributing to that work. And together with all these efforts and improvements, we are hoping to create a reinvigorated Stoughton in both fact and perception. This remarkable improvement has been achieved through the effort of our amazing students and teachers and administrators in all of our schools, and congratulations to all of them. Particular credit must go to previous school committees who have joined with our administration for the past half-decade in a strong and high-performing, highly functioning governance team that contributed to and doggedly supported the vision, the plan, and the budgets to support the plan over the last 5 school years. These people partnered with us, giving countless hours in study, data analysis, research, thinking, and arguing to arrive at the best plans in bad economic times to bring educational improvement to this district. In our high-performance governing teams, trust, honesty, caring, and constant positive outlook and drive were the hallmarks. This does not mean that everyone agreed all the time. Rather, when this positive dynamic and a supportive atmosphere are created, people feel comfortable bringing a variety of different ideas to the table. And as a result of that winning formula, the best ideas emerge, and the best in each person is accessible. Additional thanks go to the Finance Committee and its Subcommittee on Education, and the Stoughton Town Meeting members who believed in us, and partnered with us to implement the vision we presented and the plans to support it. Thank you for understanding and supporting the budgets that we have brought you over the years. All of you have contributed to this success. As excited as we are, and we are, about this wonderful news, we will never lose sight of the fact that there is still much work to do. And we've already started looking closely at the data, targeting the areas that we're going to approach next. As things improve, we're able to focus actually with more vigor on the areas that still need work. And we will build on our strengths, and we will bring all of our resources to bear in order to eliminate the weaknesses we still have. And we will rest never until each child every day receives the finest educational experience that's possible to have in every grade level, in every subject. And because this is such a big news, and that the MCAS goals are complicated and difficult to understand, accountability changes are monumental and difficult to understand, I'm going to be working with my leadership team tomorrow, and we will pick a time where we can do a larger presentation on the scores with more depth, and we will invite all the parents who want to come, the PTOs, the school councils, all the town meeting members who are interested in seeing what their budgets have done over the years, the selectmen, all of the previous school committee people who have participated in this. Obviously, our current school committee is welcome, and we will be talking tomorrow about how long it'll take us. Only a few days to put that together so everybody can come and hear about this from the people who have actually done it on the ground, what they've done, how they've done it, and what we plan to do to move on. So that's my announcement related to MCAS scores.
Very good.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I'd certainly like to
Ms.
make
Hussain?
comments. First of all, congratulations, and really I think congratulations to the community, to the children in particular, to the teachers. It takes a village to raise a child. And I really, I think, rallied together and shown the support. And just as kind of an aside, having been on the committee now about 5 years,
that would be a half decade.
It would be a half decade. Really going back to the FinCom process, the town meeting process, for me the turning point was coming on the committee as we were coming out of the 2008 layoffs and in a rebuilding mode. Going before the town with a budget that was greater than 2.5%. The focus of the committees that I've been on has always been about what are we getting for that growth, for that extra money. We know that 2.5 is pretty much what we are limited to, plus some growth numbers. But we've asked for more, and we've asked for more for very specific reasons. And along the process, I would like to thank Ms. Sauvanet, who came back from one of the meetings of the school committees down on the Cape, with the executive budget summary process, which I think was really critical and a turning point in being able to present the vision and the growth, the programs like the home parent child reading program, the parent liaisons, the parent engagement center, things that were really hard sells in a time when there was certainly not a great deal of money, but with the vision that this was going to focus on helping the children early intervention and working towards these goals. And like I said, I've worked with some tremendous people, administration side particularly, for kind of thinking outside the box and coming up with programs that we could do with short money and with really defined objectives. So congratulations.
Very good.
Is there any other questions or comments from the board? I also would like to just say that I'm overjoyed that Gibbons, Hanson, and the high school moved up to level 1, which means that we are making sufficient progress towards narrowing proficiency gaps. And I congratulate everyone for the good results. I commend the teachers for the splendid performance during the tough year of contentious contract negotiations. The school committee, I wanted to assure people that the school committee will not rest until all schools achieve excellence. Now, I was the Department of Education with the accountability status. They also released the school percentiles, where each school, so the levels show how much progress we are making towards the goals. But the school percentiles is what the ranking is with respect to other schools in the Commonwealth. So I was really impressed with our South School, which ranked at the top 67 percentile. So that means it's really a top 1/3 of all elementary public schools in Massachusetts. Other schools are about 50 percentile. And even our West School used to be at 22 percentile with respect to the Department of Education ranking. Now it moved to 26 percentile. So I think it's a movement in the right direction. So I'm very pleased with the results, and will continue to make them all excellent. Any other comments from the board? Okay, next agenda item is item 7, advanced public access to open meeting documents of the school committee. We have decided, or we have agreed to publish our meeting packets on the school website. So we were going to do it at this meeting. For some reason, there was a glitch. Was that resolved?
I did not talk to Ryan
Okay.
Yesterday or today. I'm sure it will be.
So we for this time only, we put it on Mark Snyder's website and then put links to it. And I got a lot of calls from people of Stoughton that this was really great idea, and that it was really helpful to them. With that kind of availability, people can come to here meeting and then download the packet to their devices and then follow what we are doing more closely. So hopefully by next meeting, the Friday before the next meeting, we'll put it on the school website, and then everybody will point to that. Any discussion on this item? Item number 9.
I think you want
item
8?
number 8, I'm sorry, I missed that. Fingerprinting policy, second reading. We had a demand from STA to negotiate. You have seen that, right?
To negotiate or to impact bargain?
Is it
No,
impact
they
bargain?
want to impact, I'm sorry.
They want
to
first of all,
negotiate before you do the policy.
But I thought I just want to clarify, because this has come up before, we are the policy-making branch of the school system, and whatever policy is put in place, they have the right to impact bargain.
Okay. So first they asked for a copy of the policy. Were you able to send it to them?
Yes.
You did? Did they give any comments?
Not to me.
So what I like to do is, before we get into any impact bargaining or anything, or approve the policy, I like to see what kind of comments they have. They may be useful comments, or we may choose to ignore the comments. But that's my opinion. How does the rest of the board feel?
Again, I just like to reiterate that while they may be useful comments, we have a policy mechanism in place, particularly since we're looking at MASC to help us with our policy manual. In that, in fact, again, you were elected member we are all elected members of this committee, and our charge is one of 3 is to produce policy. And then upon completion of policy, everybody who it impacts has the ability to demand impact bargaining. So I would hate to see us make exceptions to that, because I think it opens the door to a great number of exceptions on just about every policy we develop. Same thing came up during the social media policy.
Okay.
Mr.
Soares?
I'm for getting information from anybody, because I think that makes us brighter and smarter. That's my take on it.
So according to our current policy, we have first reading, second reading, and then the third meeting is the vote.
No.
That's the policy.
Policy is first and second reading, and if necessary, a third reading. But generally, the practice of the school committee is to do the votes in 2 readings, the second reading being the vote.
So, the policy that I remember that's posted on the school website says first reading, second reading, and then the next meeting is the vote.
Policy in the school committee policy manual, because we actually reviewed this policy at one of our subcommittee meetings, and it's a 2-vote policy with an opportunity to do a 3rd vote if necessary.
So, I mean, you can see if there is
Well, he did say there was an opportunity to do a 3rd if it's necessary.
Okay.
Can I ask how long they've had the policy for comment?
Not too long.
No, I
They
mean,
only
I just
asked
saw
quite
the
recently.
request today.
So you sent it today?
I sent it,
I don't see what it could be possibly be bargained.
just, yeah.
Some,
I think it was just
I mean,
today.
if you want to look at this particular policy, I don't actually see anything in here that would be subject to bargaining, because it's really, I mean, there's the law, there's the regulation. This reflects the law and regulation. There's no liberties taken. And this is more of a set of guidelines for the administration. It's not a set of guidelines for teachers, because it's basically it's the school committee conveying to the superintendent and potentially to her designees in the school district what the expectation is in terms of carrying out this required process. And really, when you look at the reason why the school committee is putting a policy, and there's model policies and there's regulations, we incorporated both in this, it's to provide specific information to the superintendent and what the expectation is for determining suitability. And that's not something that's subject to bargaining. It also gives specific guidance to the superintendent or future superintendents in what to rely upon when looking at previously conducted suitability determinations that were done by other school districts. So I don't actually, you know, I'm always surprised generally by these things in terms of what people may want to bargain. But I don't necessarily see anything in here that would be require impact
You
bargaining.
may be right. So I personally will vote to wait for their input. You know, just give them a reasonable time, like a week, and then see if they come up with any suggestions that would make it more palatable. Because once you start doing impact bargaining, you know, it's time from the lawyer that costs money.
But having input into the policy will not preclude them from impact bargaining.
That's true.
I'm old school. I'm not in a rush. You know, it's another 2 weeks. To me, it's...
So is there a...
I'm like the...
Well, is there a... Well,
like the turtle.
we can decide not to vote, or superintendent can make a recommendation of if you want to have a vote today, we can vote today. So what I'll do is I'll ask the superintendent for a recommendation.
Well, it's always been my understanding that the school committee has the right to make policy, and the union's role is to demand impact bargain, at which point the committee would fulfill that obligation if it was necessary to do so. So given that, the normal process would be to vote the policy unless there was something in the policy that you would like rewritten or amended before it got a 3rd reading. But I hear this committee taking a very different view to what is usually that understanding. Therefore, it makes me a little reluctant to make a recommendation.
If you don't have a motion, then it just carries to the next
So
meeting.
is there a superintendent is reluctant to make a recommendation? Is there a motion? Okay, no motion. So we'll put that on the agenda for next meeting. Ms. Shea. All right. Next item is 9. Proposed new policy pertaining to student data collection. I thought Ms. Brunson was going to be here, but she took the time to prepare this item. She's concerned about
Do you want to hang on until the next meeting?
No, we can just start talking about it.
All
So
right.
this is not even a first reading. This is just going over. Maybe I'll ask the superintendent and assistant superintendent if they had a chance to look at this and start gathering their thoughts and comments.
I did have a chance to look at it. I find this in many ways extremely concerning and problematic, and I would not recommend that you consider a policy such as this without it being thoroughly and completely vetted by an attorney. There are some assumptions that are most unusual. You would certainly not find another district in the state, I believe, who would be entering into a policy of this sort. And it is most imperative, in my view, that you get a legal opinion on this before you consider any aspect of it whatsoever.
Yeah, that I think that's the intention, but this is just to get some thoughts on the paper. What I wanted to do here is, she lists a number of things that prohibiting collecting student data on. So I just wanted to see if we do those or any of these, or we don't do any of these, or some of these. So that's why I like to go over these items.
I think we did this already, didn't we, when we talked about this? Ms. Bronson brought this forward before, and we talked about what aspects of
In
the...
response to her, we certainly did talk
Yes.
about
So
the
this
proper
has
use
been
of Social Security
well and
numbers
truly covered.
So do we collect social security numbers?
No.
No. That's good. Do we biometric records?
No. We have had this discussion in all of these particulars.
We only collect,
So you're saying we do not collect any of these?
we only collect what we're required to collect by the Department of Education.
Okay, what are we required to collect from this list?
This is a multi-page list. This is an extremely
this is just one
complicated and
page.
unusual document. And we have already prepared materials on it, but since we don't have them here, before we have any more comments on this, I think we need to bring those out that we had at the last meeting,
Okay,
previous
so-
meeting, and go over them all again. If
I
that's
think that's fair. What I'm going to ask, if the committee agrees with me, is to go over, so this, I'm just looking at the first page. First page, there are 7 plus 8 plus 4, 15, 19 items. So just look at those and then say no, yes, that's it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This is just very unusual in that we've got somebody from the public bringing forth a policy that doesn't fit within our guidelines. I would feel much better if, instead of doing this and discussing all of these items in depth, that we instead answer with a policy or procedure of how somebody from the public would engage in helping create a policy, because this is to involve, first of all 5 people in a very public meeting, and to answer some questions that, if they're not in their full context, could be construed by the public. I mean, you're talking some very, very kind of tricky stuff here, and for somebody to twist the words or not understand it is kind of terrifying. I would really prefer that we had a process that said the chair and Deputy Superintendent Ford, who's working on policy, is somebody who works with a person or screens the information that comes in, because, like I said, this is just very,
Well, the idea here is not to for her to write the policy. So this is just, she's been coming here making public comments.
I understand.
And the purpose here is just to see, we need a policy on this or not. And I asked her to outline her concerns, and she put down 19 items in here. All we have to say is yes or no to each one of these items.
But the public has this document in their hands, and it talks about things like biometric data and sexual behavior and attitudes of students. And if you start answering and somebody construes an answer from this table incorrectly, it is going to be
Major lawsuit.
I mean,
I
there's
don't
your
think so.
lump
I mean, it won't be the school committee vote, and the document already
No.
says it's from Mrs. Bronson.
Well, it also, no, but on top of it, it says school committee's policy pertaining to student data collection.
Doesn't
It looks
even
like
say
it's a
draft.
school committee policy.
It's
Well,
not-
I will not participate in
I'm
this
not either.
discussion. I'm just very uncomfortable with it.
Well, for
Public
the
servant, I don't do these
next meeting, I'm asking, we have a list of these, because we say we don't collect any of these, and then Assistant Superintendent says, well, we only collect the stuff that we are required by Department of Education. So I like to know, what we are collecting. That's all.
Could you run this by the attorney, just
Sure.
for, like I said, I think that there's so many things here that, I understand what you're asking.
Right.
And I do think it's a simple request, but I think that the material here can be interpreted so many different ways. I would really prefer that a school attorney who sees school policy all the time talks to us about this first.
I think she's got a good point.
Okay.
He'll go for it now.
I think
All
she's
right.
got a good point, yeah.
We lost Katie.
Hmm?
Don't worry, we're not going to vote on nothing.
Number 10,
Who's Katie?
Who's Katie?
she just stepped out.
She just stepped out.
Okay, number 10,
We won't vote without her.
Policy Manual Development, MASC. She's the one who called the MASC, so let's skip on that. Go to monthly financial reports, which is included in your packets. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I made the question that I would certainly like to get with Maria and sit down and talk with her.
Okay.
And Dr. Rizzi had made a statement that for some reason she has some hesitation on it, and I assume that either you and her are going to talk together and get something resolved. I don't know. Am I hearing that correctly, Doctor?
I'd prefer to talk about it when we're, tomorrow.
I understand.
All right. Next is acceptance of minutes for regular meeting, May 13. Any corrections to that? I have one typo on, actually I have two. On page, it's in the old business. School building committee update.
Which one do you want?
At the May 13 minutes.
May 13 minutes.
School building committee update in old business. Oh, you don't have it? Oh, okay. It just says he is have difficulty. Should be having difficulty. Okay, on the last page, top, first line, member is interested to. Insert is interested before to. Any other corrections or revisions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So it's 4-0, Ms. Enochian stepped out. Next is minutes for the
May 28th.
June 2nd, special meeting.
June 2nd special meeting. Is there any corrections, revisions?
I have a question. I'm trying to look at the paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the 6th paragraph, which is the largest one.
Which page, please?
First page.
First page. And it says, then she heard that there was 160,000 math error. She stated that it turned out not to be a math error. It was an overestimate of step payments. Was that $160,000? Did I hear that through negotiations or whatever it is?
I don't remember. If you are challenging, then we can ask Ms. Shea to check the tape, but she won't be thrilled with you.
And actually,
So your question is?
ignore my question, Mary.
Whatever the will of the board is, fine with me.
Yeah, ignore my question. Because I've done that and I hate it, so I'm sure you do too.
Okay, there was one thing that you need to be here for.
A vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So is there a motion to?
I move to accept the minutes of the special meeting of June 2nd, 2014.
Is
I
there a
second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Unanimous. May 16. Any corrections, revisions?
No,
Oh, no. That means I got it from you. Okay. Any corrections, revisions, June 2nd? Is there a motion?
June
You want me
16th.
June 16? Is there a motion?
I move to accept the minutes of the June 16th special meeting.
I
Opposed?
second it.
I mean, second, so is there all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. June 18,
Move to accept the minutes of the special meeting of June 18th.
second.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. June 23,
And I move to accept the minutes of the special meeting of June 23rd.
Second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Ms. Enochian says she's not feeling well.
No, she's not.
I think I have what my kids.
Oh, no.
So,
I hope you
do
have
we
not
have
passed
anything
it
else
around.
pressing on the agenda? Anything that we need to discuss today?
You want an update on the NASC policy manual development?
Oh, yeah, Katie,
If she needs to leave, that's, yeah.
She doesn't feel good, let her go home.
Yeah.
okay.
Just letting you know that
She got kids.
we have all the required materials. We have paid invoice. We're waiting on MASC to come and pick up all the recorded documentation. Once they do, the process is on standby.
Right, the purpose for having this on the agenda this week was, who's gonna be the point person. And then we were discussing to having one person from the school committee, one person from the administration. And Katie checked, and there's no problem with doing it that way.
Doing it which way?
Having one person from school committee and,
The school can absolutely do what it'd like to do. That's just wasn't the recommendation of MASC. But at the same time, it's our process. Do it any way we like.
Exactly.
Whatever you choose to
Okay.
do, we'll do the best we can.
so you and I will be the, you wanna work on this, right?
Yeah.
So you and I will be the point person interacting with the MASC.
Okay.
So I'll copy all my communications to you, and then I ask you do the same to me.
Of course.
Thank you. Is there anything else? I want to terminate the meeting. Stop the meeting. If there isn't anything that's urgent that needs to be discussed.
There's no old business updates.
Okay. And we have no executive session, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Warrants, yeah. Katie, you feel?